OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's bang on 7:30 and we're on Wednesdays, OTB AM. I had to think about that one. Eoin is here, Eoin.
How are you?
Colm is here.
Hi guys.
Hey, less croaky this morning. Colm, how are you?
I was perfectly fine yesterday. It's the exact same as I sounded yesterday. I'd have to grab a cardigan because it's a bit cold in the studio.
We like to keep people on their toes, of course. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number if you want to get in touch with us. We've been following the overnight travel arrangements of Shamrock Rovers, and it turns out they've landed in Dublin, not Shannon, because it was too foggy for them to land. So Mark Lynch, their PRO, has been texting this morning, or tweeting this morning, heavy fog at Shannon Airport, 2 attempted landings, Rovers back in Dublin. So, you know, all's well that ends well. What an amazing achievement, first off, and also the travel arrangements have proved to be okay in the end.
No, the travel arrangements are the big thing here. We have not buried the lead, and it is looking at Scoopy on the ground and kicking him while they're down. It's like, look at you, out of the competition, and we get to land in Dublin. This is how you do it. So maybe Scoopy were right all along. The conspiracy was real, and efforts to shunt him over to Shannon Airport were actually some sort of inner workings of the Illuminati of Irish football.
There you go. Which apparently had been acting against Rovers, according to the Rovers crowd in advance. They were like, this is not good. Something's not good here, because all the European teams are able to fly straight into Dublin and we're not. Somebody's computer's very loud, which makes a change. Hey Colm, how are you? Welcome to the studio.
Hi Jared.
Let me in. We were supposed to be here talking about Serena. Beep, 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 Serena. So Serena Williams yesterday, in typical Serena Williams style, authored a first-person essay in Vogue. We're going to talk more about Rovers with Gavin Cooney in a few minutes. And it was an unusual place for a tennis player to announce their impending retirement. But I suppose it was actually a mark of the position that Serena Williams holds in pop culture / the outside world, that it wasn't a sports organisation that Serena went to tell her story. It wasn't the player's voice. It was Vogue. What was your immediate reaction, Colm? Were you surprised, or did you think ultimately this was coming?
I was surprised she announced it or even acknowledged the fact that she was going to retire. She said herself in the essay that she doesn't like using the word retiring. And I thought that herself and Roger Federer would never actually formally announce their retirement. Like John McEnroe never actually retired, just eventually stopped playing, because I thought they couldn't bring themselves to do that, and they would never rule out returning in their mid to late 40s or something, such as their dedication and obsession with the game. So I was surprised that it arrived, and I was surprised as well that she announced it before the last Grand Slam of the year. But I'm guessing her intention is to finish this season out, this summer season in America, and then call it a day there. But at the same time, like, I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if she did reverse that decision and returned in a year or two down the line.
A couple of interesting things. When I heard that something had happened, quick Google, and the first story that came up was the Vogue piece, and the second story that came up was Serena winning a match for the first time in ages. And the post-match press conference had been like, oh, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I feel good, but that light's getting brighter. And what does that light signify? Well, I'm not really sure. I want to. And then like 4 hours later, the piece gets published by Vogue, which says the light at the end of the tunnel is the end of my career. But it was a very long piece. I got bored after the first 3 or 4.
How many words was it?
First page, I don't know. I didn't.
6,000.
6,000 words. Okay, fair enough. So, you know, it's very self-indulgent, and that's fair enough. I suppose she's the greatest athlete. She's one of the greatest athletes of all time. And so that's fair enough. The main thing that I got from it was that she wants to start a family, and that her daughter has essentially guilted it into her, because her daughter keeps saying that she wants to be a big sister. When she grows up, she wants to be a big sister, and she's listening to this going, I better sort that out, because, like, you know. But Serena's rich. She can have a baby anytime.
I'm surprised that her daughter didn't turn around to her and was like, when I grow up, I want Mom to have blown Margaret Court's record out of the bloody water. But clearly doesn't have the competitive edge.
Bit of guilt when the kid realises at like 2022, my mom was second. I wonder what happened there. What prevented
It's your fault, Olympia.
Exactly. It's like you guilted me into it because you want a little sister, and I bet you in the end we'll see if they all get on. You know, I mean, sometimes siblings don't get on.
Famously, coming out of retirement possibility would be extraordinary, wouldn't it? Just like it would be like unprecedented, because like coming out of retirement at like the age of 40.
She's 41 at the end of September. Yeah, it would be remarkable.
Like, But like, I'm even trying to think of any sort of parallel to that, and it would be unprecedented. Like Jordan finished his comeback at the age of 40.
Tom Brady retired and then come back.
It's Tom Brady.
You know.
And speaking of American greats,
one at the age of 40. I guess.
The lads discussed it last night in the news round. If you were to do an American Mount Rushmore, Serena gets on it +3. Does Serena get on it?
Serena, Tiger, Jordan, Brady.
You can name another 4, and then another 4.
It's a thing. It's
You
America's
know what I
too
mean?
big. Like Jesse Owens, really.
Yeah, well,
You
yeah.
know. But like
Jesse Owens versus Hitler.
the thing about
I mean, that's
It's way more important than
the number of championship rings you have. Is that what you're saying?
a little bit.
you know the thing about Serena is that trying to justify her career
Jackie
in
Robinson.
statistics is like she reached world number
Muhammad
1.
Ali.
Oh, I forgot
Right.
about him actually.
Yeah, okay, come on.
He'd make
She
it.
reached world number 1, but that's not even that's barely you can even barely even mention that in her career. Usually that's the pinnacle of someone's career is when they got to world number 1, but that's kind of besides the point for her. Like 23 Grand Slam titles and 73 singles titles in total, 14 Grand Slam doubles. She never lost a Grand Slam double final, 4 Olympic gold medals, 319 weeks at world number 1, but it's way down the list. Highest earning female athlete ever. She won, like, I think it was a number of Grand Slam titles after the age of 30. What was the number again? 10. She won 10 Grand Slam titles at the age of 30. That's remarkable. Like, she was written off
After the age of 30.
Yeah,
Right.
She was written off a number of times throughout her career in terms of, she's lost a bit of her focus on the sport, and because she's transcending the sport. I mean, she is first name territory. And as soon as people accused her of that, she'd come back with the bang. I think it was 2007 Australian Open. That's exactly what she was accused of. Well, you're not as focused as you once were. And then she ended up obliterating Maria Sharapova in the final. First time she played Sharapova, 2004 Wimbledon final, which Sharapova won. She beat her in 20 times after that, Serena. So
Good.
I took that personally. That was like the Michael Jordan last dance. I took that personally.
Look, I think the documentary about her that I remember seeing was grand, not great. I haven't seen the movie. Is the movie good?
I haven't seen it.
Haven't seen it.
Um,
0 for 3.
I've seen the Oscar ceremony, but I haven't seen the movie.
and sorry, the Oscar ceremony does make me want to watch the movie. Like
completely.
it was good hype. It was like, you know. So I suspect there will be a good documentary made. The trouble is that all these documentaries are all now made with their participation, and so Serena's legacy is complicated. We should talk about this. Like, there's an incident. Drug testers arrive at her house, and she's in the panic room. Like, you know, I mean, okay, that's an interesting response. She feared for her life. Apparently, that's the story. She thought people were breaking in, and so I guess if you fear for your life and the repercussions of somebody breaking into your house, you go to your panic room. It's a you know, that's a reaction for sure. So that complicates the legacy in many respects. And then there's also the relationship with tennis authorities. Frankly, I don't care about that. Like, giving out to lines people, whatever. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Most of these tennis players have, at some stage or other, done stuff that isn't great. Like, that stuff I'm less concerned about.
Yeah, like there was also the hacking of the WADA system that kind of revealed more therapeutic use exemptions than had been known beforehand. And I know she wasn't the only one. I think Venus was involved in that. I think Federer, that it had been brought up around him, and Petra Kvitova was the other player around that time in 2016 when that information came out. So it is definitely complicated, and those questions have existed for quite some time. But I kind of agree with you as well. I think maybe in the moment we had conversations around the on-court, I guess, battles with line judges or whatever, and it's kind of felt very important. But now at this juncture, it kind of feels like what were we even chatting about really?
Oh well, I mean, no, that was extraordinary. The 2018 US Open final.
Just remind us what happened. I can't remember.
That was when
Osaka, right?
Yeah, that was against Naomi Osaka in her first Grand Slam final, and then Serena, because of on-court coaching, which she refused to acknowledge was happening, and then afterwards her coach openly admitted, oh yeah, he was coaching her, and in the meantime Serena accused the umpire Carlos Ramos of being a thief and a sexist, and saying that this wouldn't happen if I wasn't a woman, and also she said, you'll never umpire in a court of mine again, you know.
And did he?
Full on ego. I don't think they ever were aligned again, no, because I don't think they were allowed, because that was such a massive story that
Did she lose
went
that
way
final?
beyond that final. Yeah, she lost that final, and that's the whole story. That's what's so fascinating about Serena. Look, 23 Grand Slams. The 23rd that she won was the 2017 Australian Open against her sister Venus when she was 8 weeks pregnant. That's absolutely remarkable. Then she comes back. She has huge complications actually in her pregnancy, gets quite ill, has postnatal depression as well that she suffers from, does return to the sport, and quite remarkably reaches 4 more Grand Slam finals, but loses all 4. 2 Wimbledons in a row and 2 US Opens in a row. So Angelique Kerber at Wimbledon 2018 last. And the thing is that she kind of dominated her way en route to those 4 finals and then got dominated in those 4 finals, which she has since really admitted is because of that Margaret Court record, which she just cannot get to and will not get to. And we've discussed here the last 12 to 18 months when we're in here previewing Grand Slams, you always bring it up.
Yeah,
Serena, is she going to do it?
I want her
is
to
she
do
going
it.
to do it?
You know,
and then,
I'd love Margaret Court to be knocked off her effing perch.
Yeah,
It's
and
like,
I mean, what I found interesting was in Serena's essay on Vogue is that she referenced Margaret Court as her. It's like, I don't think about her. Now, you know, I'm sure she would have put the time aside to mention her by her full name and give her the credit she deserved if she thought highly of Court, and I don't think she does, and maybe that was the big motivation for her to surpass. But she also mentioned Steffi Graf's record years ago when she was on about 16 or 17 slams and Graf's was 22, and she immediately said that's the target I want to hit and surpass, and there was no hesitation there. That's what she wanted to do. She was a goal-setting player, just like Novak Djokovic is. So she feels, well, not alone did I not win the 24th and get by Court, she should have won 30 plus titles, she said, 30 plus Grand Slams. So her legacy is, you know, unparalleled. We'll never see the likes of her again. Our own Sue Murphy texted yesterday to me straight away when the Vogue article was released and said, we'll never see the likes of her again. And that cannot be argued. And then at the same time, she's never going to be at that top because she lost those 4 finals after coming back. But she had a baby and she came back and she got the 4 Grand Slam finals, which is a remarkable achievement.
Incredible.
Yeah, look, one of the most remarkable athletes of her era. The whole point about it is never seeing stuff again. It's like we're always prisoners of the moment. Oh, we'll never see this again. We'll never see that again. And then, you know, you actually like.
I think it's fair to say for Serena, though, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
of course,
who would have thought after Federer, it's like, oh, no one's ever going to be as good as him, and then along comes immediately 2 others who are just as good.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Serena, it's not just her dominance on court. I guess it's what she represented off court. I mean, can you imagine, like, you know, the racism that her and Venus had to put up with at the top. I mean, she's a... It
was Indian Wells, was it?
Yeah, Indian Wells 2001, where she didn't play there until 2015. You know, like, she had to endure so much, like, and then coming from the background that they, like, came from Compton, which, again, like, is easy to underestimate. Like, they didn't come from a tennis background. Like, they didn't have privilege in their family. And lots of players make it that way, like Diego Schwartzman and Dominic Thiem, 2 at the top of my head, had a tough background. Like, they had to overcome obstacles to make it in tennis. But most tennis players, you know, it's provided for them. They are set up to make it as tennis players. And these two certainly weren't. And also Venus blazed the trail. Like, you know, Venus was the one really who set it up for her.
It's true. And definitely early doors, I felt like Venus was going to have the
2000, 2001 Venus, if you look at her record, incredible.
Yeah.
All
right, so all in all, you love Serena.
I didn't for a long time because, a bit like Federer in the 2000s, she was too dominant. It was no fun. Didn't like her winning all the time, but definitely the last few years, certainly since she's come back from giving birth, you can't help but love her. And then, like, just her sheer desire and unfiltered want to win that 24th is infectious. And I really thought Wimbledon this year, not that she's going to win it, but just to get to that second week would have been amazing. Like Federer did the year before, but then to lose to Harmony Tan in that first round in what was a very close contest, probably one of the matches of the tournament, that was heartbreaking. And then it felt when she lost that match, I don't know if I'll see her again, but I didn't think I'd see the day so soon afterwards that she would actually write an article acknowledging the fact that she's about to retire.
It did feel like that was the end. I have to say, watching that match, it was like she just couldn't do it anymore. She was like right there. She had the winning of that match and a relatively straightforward passage afterwards to, you know, be a contender.
Yeah.
But she just couldn't get over the line. The last bit of oomph had gone. The fatigue was setting in. She looked spent.
But here's another way that she's amazing. 40 years old. That was her first singles match in exactly a year. The previous one was the first round Wimbledon 2021. And she nearly beat a player in Harmony Tan. Okay, who was playing her first Wimbledon, but Tan got well into that tournament and was beating other players afterwards who were in their peak. Like, that's how brilliant Serena is. And also with Serena too, in just terms of her game, she's associated with raw power, but she actually had brilliant finesse. And she used to get into the heads of players, and she'd actually just mentally beat a player. And she had an amazing serve as well. That was her big thing. Her consistency and her variety in serving. Like, it's probably something that's overlooked about Serena is that we're very stats heavy talking about Serena because you can't avoid all these amazing numbers associated with her career. And nobody ever had the upper hand in her too. Her great rivals like Martina Hingis, Jennifer Capriati, Justine Henin-Ardenne, they all have losing records against Serena. Nobody surpassed her. Venus Williams has a losing record against her. But it's actually her game itself is worth analysing. And that's probably another piece for another day, is actually what made her so great. If you take away Serena the brand and the transcendental figure, what actually made her a brilliant tennis player. And that itself is, I think, a real source of interest. And hopefully we'll get to appreciate that more when she retires and we get to look back on her career. All
right, that's Colm's thoughts on Serena this morning. We'd love to hear yours. The hashtag is OTB AM. You can tweet us at Off The Ball AM. 7:45 this morning here. We're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Off The Ball is going back to Vicar Street. It's our first Vicar Street Roadshow in a long time. It's in association with Cadbury FC. Massive one coming your way. It's Today Week. Michael Eoin, Ian Wright, Emma Byrne and Karen Carney will be our guests. It's essentially a fundraiser for grassroots women's football. There should be some great stories tonight. Michael Eoin is a very, very good storyteller, and so is Ian Wright. And it's also obviously going to be a celebration of where the women's game has gone and where it's going to. We're not jinxing anything, but the World Cup next year is opening up for Ireland and the opportunity to get there. Things are definitely looking rosy. So it's an exclusive off-air event. Tickets are very limited. Don't delay. Go to otbsports.com/events, and a reminder that ticket proceeds will be towards supporting Irish women's grassroots football. We're going to buy a lot of kit with the proceeds, so the more people who go, the more kit we get to buy. T's and C's apply. We'll see you on the night. Up next, we're live in studio with the 42's Gavin Cooney, reacting to Shamrock Rovers' tremendous European football result last night. First, here's Shane Walsh talking exclusively to Off The Ball about his desire to play for Kilmacud Crokes. Watch this.
It's all kind of blown up, Shane, in the last 10 days, 2 weeks, hasn't it?
Did it?
Yeah. You found Vincent's all right today? You got here, you found it okay?
Yeah, no, in fairness, they're welcome now. There were a lot of papers been thrown out in front of me, but don't know what there was on them.
Yeah. Talk us through, what happened after the All-Ireland final? Is this something, the transfer from Kilkerran, Clonberne to Kilmacud Crokes, has this been in the pipeline for a while, or has it just come up? What's going on?
No, yeah, look, I suppose, obviously, I was saying, like, it's circumstantial, I suppose. Like, the fact that probably I'm not 21 years of age anymore and kind of flying around the place, you know, that was probably a big part for me, you know, moving up to Dublin, going back to college and that. And, you know, it was probably... It didn't really stem until probably maybe February, March time. I started to pick up a couple of niggles around my hips and my back, and you know, it was starting to take the enjoyment out of it. And you know, I was coming up from training, and sometimes I wasn't able to train, and there was nothing worse. You're driving 2.5 hours down the road, and then you're tight, not able to train, and you're literally getting physio and going back up again. And you know, for me, anyone that knows me knows I love playing football, and like that's what it's all about for me. I want to play football for as long as I can, and as I said, it might have taken 21 years for Galway to get to an Ireland final, but I mightn't be able to go another 21 years playing football, but I love the idea of it. Like that's for me what it is. And look, this for me is a personal decision. I'm hoping to prolong my career, shortening the travel distance for the period I'm up in Dublin. But as I said, like I'll be back down to Kilkerran Clonberne in the future.
Yeah, it's put the club in the context for us. It's a small enough club in Galway, playing intermediate at the minute.
Yeah, we are. I was flagging outside, like we're telling Brendan outside that like we're probably known for our ladies now at the moment. Like our ladies are All-Ireland Club champions. So, but yeah, look, we're a small club, and like numbers out in the rural areas are dwindling as well. So it is tough going. Like, and I said, like, but I suppose it's the travelling. I suppose that no one kind of sees. Like everyone sees you out playing. Like Joe, you don't really see the work that goes in behind, and like there's so much work that goes in when you're trying to train and prepare. Like, and commitment's probably a big thing for me. That Joe, when you're there, you have to be there. Like, and you kind of, people saying, oh, train here, there and everywhere. Like, but for me, like when you're part of something, you're there all the time. Like, and just for me, I know I wouldn't, I just wouldn't enjoy it. If I'm getting injured and not playing, what good am I to anyone? And the only person that's probably feeling sorry for themselves is me. Like, because you're injured, you're not able to play something you love doing, something you dreamed about doing since you were, since I was born, basically. Like,
so it's a process. A transfer in Gaelic football, it can be protracted sometimes, but it's in Croke Park at the minute. You put the request in, and that's kind of where it is at. Is that where it's at?
Yeah, that's
too late
where it's at.
Too late for Vincent to throw their hat in, is it?
I haven't a clue though, but no, I'm not great in the technical side. So yeah, no, look, there's a process going on at the moment, and I suppose that's where it's at.
Best luck.
All right, that's Shane Walsh at our roadshow at Vincent's the other night. Himself and Sean O'Shea had a kicking competition ruined by the wind, I was reliably informed, as Tommy Rooney was pinging the ball over and kind of showing off Glenn Hoddle style to the two lads. This is how you do it, lads.
I've also never seen like an OTB presenter show up to a roadshow in full kit.
The shortest of short shorts.
It's like a professional broadcaster has actually just gone John Terry on the whole situation.
Yeah. Tommy's on holidays this week, so he won't have the right of reply until he comes back. But we'll give him one as soon as he wants to come on and do it. Gavin Cooney is with us. Gavin, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. All good, yeah.
I will say one thing about that. I went up to that and we were like right at the side of the pitch when they were taking the free kicks. And I had this kind of overwhelming sensation of deja vu. And the deja vu was I'd been down in Davy Russell's the previous week looking at racehorses and 2-year-olds who were like just becoming. And I was like, these guys are like racehorses. They were so sinewy and I mean I realise this sounds a little bit whatever, I'm going to stop now, but it was unbelievably impressive is where I will go with that.
Okay, but then you weren't struck with the feeling that I could kick these.
I was not struck with that feeling. I was like, there's something kind of at at another level than, and they're not supposed to be because they're GAA players. They're supposed to, they're supposed to be the same as us. They all get up and go to work in the morning, but these lads are like, that's next level. Anyway,
they should just have like an ordinary man stand beside them at the start of every game, just for television purposes.
They really should. We should volunteer for that.
Yeah.
But isn't there a story of like
for yourself?
Of Sean O'Shea? Didn't Sean O'Shea? Oh, maybe this is completely wrong, but took like a year off.
Oh, he told Eoin
to find some kind of serenity.
This is
learn how
his
to
story.
kick free.
This is literally he broke this story.
Sorry,
didn't
Eoin.
realise he broke the story, and then everybody afterwards has basically claimed credit for it.
Yeah, Tommy clipped it and put it up, and was like, there was this really good story that Sean O'Shea told, and I was like, you know what? He did tell me a good story. Yeah, he became a professional.
That's why we call him Scoop Sheahan.
Yeah. Even if I don't know
if you were from North Macedonia, you'd be Scoop.
Hey,
what a segue that is.
Excellent segue. Rovers are home. There's been two subplots: the TV coverage and the travel. Bizarrely, as opposed to the football itself, which has been sensational. So let's do the subplots first. Let's bury the lead again, in keeping with the theme of the show. The subplots were that the travel had somehow. The Rovers were pissed off about it. Scoopy were pissed off about it. And in the end, all's well that ends well.
Yeah, I mean, Shamrock Rovers had to fly out and were initially scheduled to come home via Shannon Airport. We heard all about the Scoopy statement last week. Stephen Bradley held his counsel until after this game, but he went into the Zoom press conference certainly with something to say about the frustration about trying to get charter flights home. Because you have to get charter flights to these games. From third qualifying round on, you have to go via charter under UEFA rules. So he was frustrated that for some reason the Irish clubs couldn't get slots via Dublin. Whereas I think he was less frustrated by that than the fact that Ludogorets could fly in and out of Dublin and CSKA Sofia could fly in and out of Dublin for their game against Pats. But as it turns out, that tweet is by Mark Lynch, who's the media officer at Shamrock Rovers. They flew back via Shannon and it was too foggy to land. So Stephen Bradley had manifested sufficiently in our press conference to land in Dublin around 5 or 6 this morning. So you'll say all's well that ends well, but the problem is they now have to get to Budapest next week and they have to fly via charter. And again, everything is booked last minute. These games, it is a bit of a logistical nightmare as it is because you only learn your opponent. Well, okay, Rovers have 8 days notice this time. Sometimes you only have 5 or 6. But they'll have to find their way to Budapest, hopefully via Dublin.
Maybe their owner can stick on a plane for them.
Maybe,
at this stage, it's probably worth it.
Maybe. I did, there was one of the comments on my piece was just like, could they not just, get someone to fly them out of Baldoyle or something? Maybe there will be, but it's a strange, it's just been completely chaotic. Pats had probably the biggest nightmare, obviously, to fly via Knock to Sofia, and then we're stranded there for 2 days, and which led to the non-playing, should we say, because there's question marks over the Shelbourne game, which is a nightmare for Shelbourne as well. So it's been so disruptive. It's been, football is interesting in the sense that it's a window into all kinds of worlds, and this summer has been window into the world of Dublin Airport.
Travel chaos is general all over the world at the moment. Let's talk about the football. It's a massive, important moment for Rovers and for Bradley to be able to get to this point. Nothing's done that they haven't done before just yet, and Ferencváros stand in the way from a place in the Europa League. So maybe can you quantify where this stands in terms of the context of other previous results? Is this as good as we've seen in the last decade?
I don't think so. I think there's more in that Rovers team. I think that they haven't, Ludogorets aside, they haven't really faced top quality. They've still been good teams, and that's not to take away from Rovers' achievements. I think there's more in Rovers, to be honest. They were really fairly comfortable. Like, there were a few nervy moments across the two legs against Scoopy, but they were pretty commanding, and they did so without, Roberto Lopez is injured. Jack Byrne has hardly kicked a ball. Mandreu was sold at the start of this run, so I think there's more in them. I think we've seen more impressive results, one-off results. I think Pats probably have had the result of the summer so far, but there's just more to come from Rovers. They have achieved something that they hadn't achieved before, in the sense they are now guaranteed the Conference League group stages, and they've effective free hit against Ferencváros to get into the Europa League, and it's real. You could call it vindication for Stephen Bradley and everyone at Rovers who backed him. I mean, he took over in 2016. He was initially on an interim basis, and he presented to the board, I think with Stephen McPhail, this is the direction we need to go in. And the board just turned around and said, okay, go and do it. We'll back you. And they did back him. Like, there were rocky moments, particularly at the start. They were heavily beaten by Dundalk, and there was jeers and doubt among the crowd, but they stuck with him, and they got close. They obviously won the league, and they kind of dominated domestically and made the most of Dundalk's collapse, and got close last year. And it's interesting, Bradley used the phrase let themselves down against Flora Tallinn in the Conference League playoff last year. They just didn't really perform away from home, and I know that Bradley has said that externally people were guilty of underrating Flora Tallinn, but Rovers didn't hit their levels in that game, and they were way too open. So that was they've been learning. I think they've learned from the mistakes of the past. Like, they were a lot more solid against Scoopy last night, and one significant achievement, but they're not going to stop at the Conference League.
The progress for Irish football isn't going to come from one golden generation who all decide to stick together and play for a League of Ireland team and take them into the Champions League group stages. It's going to come in slow, steady increments, where one year you get beaten by Flora Tallinn, and then the next year you qualify for the group stages. And I don't know, maybe they can dream about qualifying from those group stages, but it's unlikely straight off the bat that that's going to happen. That there is a massive learning curve, a steep difference between European football and all the travel bullshit that goes with it. So this is progress. It comes slowly and hard won, and it's not very glamorous a lot of time.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, to get it, Rovers have had to build one of the best squads I think you've ever seen in the League of Ireland. Like, I mean, they have an embarrassment of riches domestically. Their average age is over 30, which is rare in the League of Ireland. I think the average age of the league is something like 24, so they're far more experienced. The squad is built for Europe, and they've needed that depth because they've missed Lopez, they've missed Byrne, they've sold Mandreu, Chris McCann missed last night. But they need that depth, and now they've achieved it. I do think, like, the base, and I think it'll become Rovers' like minimum expectation of themselves in the next couple of years, that if you win the league in Ireland, get a place in the Conference League group stages. Because if you win the first round of the Champions League through a very complex system the UEFA have set up, you get all these second chances. You drop out of the Champions League into the Europa League, and then you drop out of that into the Conference League, so it's well set up. So I do think that this should be a minimum expectation of the Irish champions to achieve what Rovers have done. That's obviously not take away from what they have done. It's always hardest to be the first in that regard, but I think that would certainly be the minimum expectation going forward that Rovers have of themselves.
And this is the incentive, isn't it, for a manager like Stephen Bradley to not take an offer in League One, or for players to not take an offer in League One. This is just on a plane that's completely different to what you can get at a similar level football-wise in England, these European nights. And, like, unfortunately or fortunately, this is what the entire season is going to be defined by when it comes to attracting talent and trying to persuade some of your younger talent to actually stay at the club. Yeah, well, I mean, the previous managers who have led Irish teams to group stages, Michael O'Neill and Stephen Kenny, both went on to manage internationally. I mean, Stephen Bradley should definitely have those ambitions down the line. I think he's only 37. Like, he's very, very young, and like, he's made mistakes. Absolutely. I mean, maybe they were too open in Flora Tallinn last year, but he has learned. I think. I mean, you can see that they've learned from previous mistakes and they've developed as a result. And it feels like, well, when you tell the story of Bradley at Rovers, there'll be a couple of almost eureka moments. One will be picking Gavin Bazunu as a 16-year-old to save that penalty against Cork. Another was going to the three at the back system, which they did after a European game in 2019. It might have been Brand, but I'm just doing that off the top of my head, so I'm not so sure. But that's been huge for them, because that's given them a very obvious identity, and it's made recruitment much easier, because now they're recruiting players with a specific place in the team in mind. I mean, this is like all the best teams now have a very clear identity, and when they recruit players, they know exactly what positions they want, what types of players they want, and there's a very defined ask of them. It's why Manchester United have been such a basket case as opposed to, say, Man City and Liverpool. They know what they're recruiting for, whereas Man United don't. Rovers do as well. I mean, they've recruited really well.
other clubs in Ireland will say, well, it's easy to recruit well when you've their budget compared to everyone else. But, you know, I mean, Dundalk had a bigger budget than Rovers last year and, you know, blew up, you know. So, yeah, I think that changed the three at the back. That came in 2019 after a European game. I think that was significant on this road to the Conference League. Possibly better.
People are going to be very excited about this question about coefficient and all that. But like, what is the possible upshot of them going into the Conference League rather than the Europa League? Obviously, with an easier group and potential for qualifying from a group, does that have long-term implications in a positive sense for next season for Irish clubs?
Well, I mean, the higher you get a coefficient, the better you be rated. I mean, like the champions path now is such that it's effective seeding. So I mean, there's one of the good things that UEFA have introduced in the last few years is A, the Conference League, and B, the Champions Path, by which the champions are kept. Champions of all the national leagues are kept in separate brackets, and as a result, it's easier to qualify. You know, it is easier to qualify for things like the group stages. So a rising tide will lift all boats. So the higher the coefficient means the better, the more likely that the Irish sides will get slightly better draws down the line, and that should be the aim. You know, I mean, I was among the people who kind of reacted with a level of derision to the FAI's strategic plan, saying we want to be in the top 30 coefficient by 2025, I think it is, which seems kind of crazy because there were 40 at the time, and it's hard to break through that glass ceiling, as it were. I don't think they'll get there, but in fairness, they're making more progress than I thought. I mean, I think it's up to 38 now, and with if Pass can get through, they have a good chance of maybe climbing to 37, 36, which having been at 42 only last year, maybe the year before, would be great progress.
Frank Faros, we're calling it a free hit. We're saying that we would expect the technically superior Eastern European team to, you know, win 3-0 over the two legs. That's what would have happened in the 80s and 90s. What chance do they have?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I haven't really got a chance to take a good look at Ferencváros yet. They'll definitely be underdogs. I think they'll find it more difficult. One of the advantages Rovers have had, like all the Irish sides so far, is the fact that they've been well battle-hardened going into these ties against sides that haven't started their domestic league, like Scoopy. Ludogorets were only a couple of games in. I'm not sure about the Hibernians. They were kind of no good anyway, but I mean, they'll definitely be underdogs against Ferencváros. I mean, my expectation would be that they would go out and go into the Conference League, but you know, they're due. I mean, what Rovers have done so far, they've been confident and pretty dominant in doing. So they're due a bit of a surprise. So maybe Ferencváros.
Ferencváros have played one game in the league so far this season, so there's still a window here for us to jimmy through and go. I presume that game's going to be on TV, right?
You'd have to hope so. I mean, the line is that like RT will follow the champions in the Premier competition, being the Champions League, and then after they go out, then they'll have a look around for what else is on. Pass against CSKA Sofia is on Thursday.
That was the line this week. I'm not sure. Was it? Did we all know that was the line previously? Had that been?
Well, I mean,
and why is it? Why are we just like, oh, that's grand? Why does that like?
Yeah, I mean, I was unaware of the Premier competition bit. Maybe I was wrong to have misinterpreted that from that being the well expounded policy last year, but that is certainly the policy that is this year. I sense some skepticism on your part.
I'm very skeptical about this. Like, we keep getting the ratings figures. It's all about the ratings. It's like it really isn't about ratings when you're taking taxpayers' money. The other thing is, Virgin aren't doing any of this. Virgin don't get paid by the government to be our national broadcaster. Virgin have to make money from advertising, which RT also do. The fact that they don't collect the licence fee or haven't managed to convince everybody that we should have a better system for collecting the licence fee is on RTE, I would argue. An Post do a bad job of it. The ads that threaten you don't seem to convince people that they need to pay. That thing doesn't seem to work. But they still get loads of money from the taxpayer to cover sport, and they funnel a load of that money to rugby, and they funnel a load of that money to GAA, and they don't funnel as much of that money to the FAI for whatever reason. Like I would say they pay way more money in rights fees for rugby and for GAA than they do for soccer. I could be wrong about that. Publish the figures and we'll find out, right?
Yeah.
But more than likely they're paying more for the GAA rights and the rugby rights for the Six Nations and for the URC than they are for football. So that's them giving money to the sport. That's the government giving RTE money, who then distribute the money as they see fit. And then they don't cover the biggest game, the biggest sporting event in Ireland this week, after the All-Ireland final last weekend, was the match last night. Is there any debate about that?
I don't think so. I think it's an outstanding achievement by Rovers. The promise is much more.
But nobody knows about it.
But nobody knows about it. There was a slight Streisand effect in the sense that there was so many people talking about the lack of coverage that Rovers did say we got a record number of LOI TV streams.
Good night for LOI TV.
It was a good night for it because, and like, I mean, they had to jump through hoops to get it. I mean, we had the scene of like Justin Ferjad's dad was ringing the Scoopy sporting director the morning of the game. Like, this is for one of the biggest games of the year. Is this game going to be on Albanian TV so we can stream it? And ultimately, Rovers made another bid for the rights to stream the game. Late in the day, got it, and I think it has proved profitable on LOI TV, which is great. But that doesn't appeal to the casual viewer who doesn't really know a whole lot about LOI TV. It needs to be on regular TV. And the argument is always that, you know, the endless bloody argument is that broadcasters will argue you need investment and grow the league and make the stadiums look better, and then it's a better broadcast product. Whereas then people will argue, well, if you broadcast it, then that'll bring the investment. So I don't know where that endlessly circular argument ends, but the European games should be seen as separate of that. I mean, they've got a prestige of their own. They're a major commercial and marketing opportunity for the league, and they should be all on TV, in my opinion. I mean, obviously RTE get all of the criticism, really. I would be critical of the commercial broadcasters for not stepping in. Like, I mean, Virgin Media would show the group stages. I don't know why they can't really step up and show the qualifiers. But then, you know, okay, RTE have a public interest remit, but they obviously see that, they obviously feel they're showing enough. I mean, Declan McBennett, who's the head of RTE Sport, was engaging pretty well with our League of Ireland fans on Twitter yesterday, I have to say. He was making the point that, 18 League of Ireland games plus cup games plus the European ties that have been shown so far, there's more Irish football on than ever before. Is that not enough for you? And
no,
actually
it's not,
the answer is no.
It's not enough. When the bar is so low, and the thing is, right, when you compare that with the number of club matches and GA matches that are going to be on, it's just not the same. And it's clear that there is more interest in showing GA and more interest in showing rugby than there is. Why did we show the URC final between the two South African teams? I haven't seen the viewership figures for that game.
I assume because contractually you have to.
But like, so what? You know, stick it on News Now.
Yeah.
Because they ended up moving the hurling quarterfinals for that game. Remember that weekend?
But the argument will be that game will get as many, if not more, viewers than the standard League of Ireland game.
Two South African teams. Arguments that they moved. It was actually an argument from within the Sunday game on air that he had suggested that they had played a 1 o'clock quarter final because of the URC final. That was certainly the suggestion I got.
It was
from
true though. It was all moved.
So I can understand. I assume. Look, I mean, I'm not privy to these conversations. I don't know.
But you make your contracts. You sign those contracts knowing what's going to happen. And if you are interested in making the league a better product, I also hold the FAI somewhat accountable for this. If you're going to give the international rights to a broadcaster, make them do more. You can have these if you do this and this.
In fairness, what's tricky for the FAI is that a lot of the international games are sold centrally through UEFA now. So, I mean, it's harder to say, here, RTE take the Nations League games, but you have to show X number of League of Ireland games. That's tricky because it's sold via UEFA. So the FAI have kind of lost that leverage, as it were. I think they could definitely do things around, like the URC demands you buy URC rights. I think you have to commit to 30 minutes build up before and however minutes reaction afterwards. That would definitely be worth bringing in from an FAI point of view. Just one thing that, like, obviously RTE seems to have some kind of commercial remit as well. I'd love some kind of clarity on like what that is versus public interest, because what confuses me is that they'll show Champions League games on a Tuesday night. So they'll show Liverpool, or I was going to say Man United, but not Man United anymore. Who's there? Chelsea or whoever. But then, like, I mean, that's obviously a commercial money spinner. There's no actually technical public interest in that, unless you can argue maybe like public interest is Caoimhín Kelleher, but it's not, basically. So, and like, why not leave that to the commercial broadcaster and Virgin Media, and then reallocate those resources into genuine public interest in screening and investing in Irish soccer? I don't know, I've never really seen that argument teased out.
There was a brilliant piece in the Examiner that Paul Farrell from Virgin made the point that they did this remarkable deal, which was the first time ever, kind of, you know, across the aisle, the DUP and Sinn Féin coming together, Virgin and RTE joining together to get the Six Nations and keep it on free to air. And his argument was, as soon as that happened, RTE took the money they saved and then bought the URC rights with it, instead of like doing something else with it. It's like, what? We just saved you a load of money and now you're just competing against us for other rights, or whatever. It might have been the Champions League. I can't remember what it was, where they spent the money, but it seems remarkable. it seems remarkable that you can spend taxpayers' money on buying stuff that other people will spend for you because you want to, as opposed to because it's for the good of the country.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of this?
Obviously, I mean, Declan McBennett gave that interview to Johnny Ward and Dan McDonnell on their podcast LOI Central last year. It was very good. Like, I listened back to it yesterday just because I thought this was going to come up. And he was making the point that, like, the group head of sports should always be, you know, the moment that group head of sports says allow something else to go somewhere else, based because they're commercial, etc. That, sorry, I'm tying myself up in knots because I'm kind of forgetting what he said. But basically, that they have to bid for these things. He was making the point around the Lions or I think was on this channel, and then the RT bid for as well. But he says there's a public interest in that, and because of the Irish people involved, and the group head of sport has to.
But it was already free somewhere else.
Has to be involved, yeah.
So why would you waste your resources? But it's already available to the audience. And what you're doing is you're splitting that audience as opposed to then taking that money and spending it on something else that the audience can't get. Like other sports that need help, like athletics or basketball or golf or whatever it is, that, like, as the national broadcaster, it's there's supposed to be a remit to help the maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe the only point of RTE is to make money. They're very bad at that because they've lost loads of money, like over the last decade. So I don't know. It's I disagree with that. I think that doesn't hold water. It doesn't have any logic. Your point about the Champions League, when the Champions League was on 2 nights on Virgin, then RTE had all this extra money that they could have spent on other things. They could have invested that in the League of Ireland. If you look, for example, what TG Carr did with we're labouring the point here, but TG Carr took the league, the League Sunday. Those matches used to never be on TV. When we were kids, do you ever remember watching a Gaelic football match, a league match on TV, apart from maybe the semi-finals and the final? They weren't on week on week. TG Carr came, put the league on, and everybody was like, league's really good. These are good matches. They turned it into something by showing it week in, week out, year in, year out. And then they started showing club matches. And then when Setanta started showing them on Saturday nights, and suddenly Saturday nights in the leagues became this really big thing, and Dublin piggybacked off the back of that, and the TV coverage to get big houses in Croke Park. And then RTE come in and goes, oh, this is good now, we'll have this, thanks very much. Like, that's not really how public service broadcasting is supposed to work. These other organisations had invested money and built it up, and ideally the money that is being spent on those could be spent on other stuff.
Declan Bennett will make the point that he kind of pithily summed up his job with that interview with Johnny and Dan. Said his job is to put the best of Irish sport on television. You can interpret that in different ways, but there clearly must be a commercial ask. I mean, like, they would presumably put on the National League because that's a way of putting good sport on RTE, which isn't just a sports broadcaster. We kind of sometimes lose sight of that in these debates, but put that on TV. Okay, you're shaking your head, so you're going to disagree with me, but that'll get good ratings, whereas, you have to, it seems like you have to get good ratings to stay on RTE in a primetime slot, which I think is fair enough, to be quite honest.
And maybe that's the whole point, and you said to it earlier on. The
Champions League will, and the League of Ireland won't.
Yeah, like they're not doing a great job of making money.
If you build it, they will come. No, we can't build it. We're going to put a game on once every 3 or 4 weeks. You never know when it's going to be. Who are the presenters? Like, what's the architecture around it? Who are the players that we've built up and followed week in, week out? That doesn't happen. Doesn't exist. It's kind of the League of Ireland's kind of a non-entity because of, I would argue, the approach towards it isn't that this is consistent. The league is on every Saturday night for 8 weeks. We know it's going to be on, and somebody else has already proven it, by the way. Like Ayr and Setanta and TG Carr proved that was something good. So look, I don't know. Maybe TG Carr can save the league.
I always thought they'd be a good partner for the League of Ireland. There's a kind of like slightly punky, subversive element to both. I think that might be a good marriage.
Right, mic up to League of Ireland referees. And away you go on TG Carr.
You're not showing that at 7:45 on a Friday. Like, that is well after the watershed, I'm afraid.
Everybody's tuning in, though.
Yeah.
Gavin, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much.
8:14 this morning. Ahead of our Carbery FC Roadshow on the 17th of August, we're going to be deciding on the top 5 most influential Irish players in both the men's and the women's game. A reminder, the tickets for the show on Vicar Street are on sale now. Ticket proceeds will go towards supporting Irish women's grassroots football. Check out otbsports.com/events for T's and C's and more. We'll see you on the night. Up next, our resident South Africa rugby correspondent Stephen Kisby-Green will tell us why the Boks were so great against the All Blacks at the weekend. First, here's football writer Tony Evans speaking with Joe Malloy here on last night's show about why Liverpool fans shouldn't overreact to the 2-2 draw against Fulham at the weekend.
You think of how many huge games this group have played in and played brilliantly in, and suddenly they're at Fulham and they're better than Fulham. But damn it, Fulham have all this enthusiasm and energy that a newly promoted side does, and it's just hard to muster those reserves again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is an element of that. And you look at Thiago, he's 31 now. He's injury prone. And, it's going to be difficult seeing them get a full season out of him. Henderson is into his 30s. And there's a little bit of age creeping in the midfield. And the youngsters, at least not yet, haven't stepped up to the plate in that area. But I also think it's, we've got to allow this group of players who've been absolutely fantastic. We're talking about 5 years when they've been relentless. Klopp's mentality monsters. We've got to allow them a bad game or two every now and then. Our fan base, Liverpool fan base, is among the biggest bunch of bedwetters of any Premier League group of supporters. And, and there's always hysteria. Well, it's early days, and a draw at Fulham mightn't be such a bad result come the end of the season. I think it's this season of all seasons is going to be a very peculiar one with the break for the World Cup and a lot of players coming back from Qatar. We're tired, I should imagine. The second half of the season is going to be a lot of injuries, I would expect, because the workload the players are given is relentless. So anything could happen. And the one thing I've learned in my fairly long football watching career is not to judge a season by a game in August.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB Sports, in association with Cabri FC, are returning with a monster football roadshow. Coming your way August 17th.
Football legends Michael Owen.
If you haven't got that attitude, then you'll never survive.
Ian Wright.
Lots to look forward to.
Emma Byrne.
That's normal, that's all in the game. The level is gone through the roof.
And Karen Carney will be our guests at Vicar Street
as they look back on their playing days and preview the new 2022-2023 season.
This is an exclusive off-air event and tickets are limited, so don't delay. Go to otbsports.com/events.
And remember that the ticket proceeds will go towards supporting Irish women's grassroots football.
T's and C's apply. See you on the night.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong. Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
17 minutes past 8 this morning. You're very welcome back to OTB AM. Loads of your comments rolling through. Chris Cal says, good to see Parrott scoring last night. Yeah, opened the scoring for Preston. First goal for Preston since he arrived. It was in the EFL Cup, so hopefully that's the start of many goals for him. It's a free hit against Ferencváros. Might as well go all out and throw everything at it. You'd never know, says JS2000. That's not really Rovers' approach, is it? I think Rovers will fancy themselves over two legs. I know literally nobody I've spoken to so far has given them a chance so much as everybody expects Ferencváros to win, but
It does seem that, they're going to be thrown into kind of a similar category to Ludogorets, and you could definitely make a case that certainly in half of that tie that they held up their end of the bargain, and quality-wise they weren't a million miles away, even though it looked at times as if the tie was going to run away from them. So, I think it's more than just a free hit. They're obviously going to be hoping for Europa League group stages. It's just amazing to have the safety net. I'd be interested as well to see kind of like what the fan culture around these two games is going to be. The first thing that kind of comes to mind is that they wear similar jerseys, but there is, as far as I know, like a connection between like Ferencváros and Panathinaikos, and a connection between Rovers and Panathinaikos in terms of their fan groups. And there's like a triumph for the clubs, I think, involving Rapid Vienna when it comes to those Central European clubs, and obviously the Greek club and Panathinaikos. And I wonder, could this be the start of something beautiful between these two clubs?
There you go. We'll obviously keep a close eye on that and look forward to the announcement that the game's going to be on telly. What goes unmentioned about Serena is that she's also won 14 doubles Grand Slams titles with her sister, says Eamon S. Ask Colin whether he favours Sancho or Serena. I think it's fairly obvious it'd be Serena in that one. No, Colin's shaking his head there. He's not sure. His love is yet to be. He's 50-50. He's a free lover. What an easy lover. 19 minutes past 8 this morning. Rick Dagger, did I say that one? I want to hear more miserable news about Man United. We've got plenty of that to come because the season is long, and there's still apparently the Man United players are sick of the circus around Cristiano Ronaldo, and they've decided to come out and talk about that, to leak those stories to the press, which is obviously going to make the circus more. So well done, everybody involved in that circus. Right, Stephen Kisby-Green is ready to talk to us this morning about the new world order that has been established over the last few seasons, which is that it is the Bockies world and we're just pretending to live in it. Stephen, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Jim. Morning, Eoin. How's it going?
I mean, I really, ever since we've had you on the mountaintop in South Africa, I kind of expect you to appear, like silhouetted against whichever amazing landmark with, whatever trophy over your head. Bellowing down your chest going, yes, we are the kings, because that's what's happening. Certainly our YouTube comments yesterday were full of the South African fans that we picked up during the Lions tour going, what were we not, did we not just crush the All Blacks? Is that not what happened? Nothing to do with the All Blacks being crap, we just crushed them.
I mean, crushed might be a bit of an overstatement, I think. It was, I think, the fifth biggest scoreline that anyone's ever beaten the All Blacks by, which is impressive in and of itself, but it's only 16 points. Like, it's not a crushing. Like 57-0, that's a crushing. South African fans are still hurting about that, and I don't think any genuine South African fan thinks that was a complete performance by the Boks. Like, it was a good win, definitely, but as we've been pointing out on both shows this week, this is not a good All Black side. So beating them by 16 points is the bare minimum we should be doing as the Springbok side.
We were making the point on the show the other day, I think it was Mark Sheahan who wrote that they felt pity for the All Blacks at some point in the game. So they actually pulled up. They thought, nah, now I know the try, there's a very, very late try, so maybe the 16 point is when they start pulling up. But certainly in and around there, they start to feel sorry for their foe.
Feeling sorry might be one way of putting it. I think it's more just a lack of South Africa's ability to step on the throat. We've shown it in Wales. We've shown it last year against Scotland as well. I mean, we couldn't beat England in Twickenham either. Great match. Like, South Africa at the moment don't seem to be able to be that ruthless side that takes their chances when they're on offer. Like, maybe you might call it pity, but I just think it was just a little bit of inexecution, a little bit of, and the South Africans looked like a little bit shocked that it was so easy to get into the All Black 22, so that when they did get in the 22, they just didn't finish everything off. Like, especially in that first 10 minutes, there were 3 scoring opportunities, of which 2 of them were nailed on almost. Mapimpi against any other side in the world, Mapimpi up that touchline in the 6th minute would have been a guaranteed try. Jordy Barrett makes the tackle, and Mapimpi knocks it on whilst trying to push it back to in any other against any other team with a reputation that isn't the All Blacks reputation, Mapimpi wouldn't have tried that weird sort of on the floor offload. That wasn't really an offload, it was more like a placement. He would have just either A, gone into touch and trusted the line out to steal, or B, wouldn't have been able to would have been able to keep his feet in touch. So I think there's a bit of a mental barrier, particularly against the All Blacks, that it's not so much pity, it's more, why are we beating them so much in these physical areas, in these areas out wide? It was an interesting sort of mentality, I think, from the Boks. And yeah, that Caleb Clark, also it wasn't even a Caleb Clark try, it was a Shannon Frizzell. How the hell did he get back in the squad? But that try from that Caleb Clark run was more a falling asleep in the midfield defense, as opposed to them actually earning that try. It was also telling to me that it happened when South Africa were down to 14 men. It was the only time they could actually break the line.
Yeah. Let's not forget that South Africa were down to 14 men for a portion of this game as well, and still won by 16 points. LB, we don't know who he is, but he says Box don't get the praises, but the Irish did. That's the difference. So we got a lot of praise. We basically softened them up for you. That was it. What I really like though is that you've taken the attitude of patronising the All Blacks at the start here. I mean, we weren't even that good. You guys are useless. Like we were going to be much better when it comes down to the big matches. Don't worry, All Blacks.
My favorite thing in the post-match press conference was Ian Foster said it was our most improved performance of the year. Now, I don't know if he's counting the first test against Ireland in New Zealand, because that was a very good All Black performance, I think. And I don't think the Irish performance was up to much because they were still jet lagged or whatever, and disruptions, etc., etc. And that was an All Black side that was heavily disrupted in the build-up as well. Now, if you say that a 16-point defeat to a Springbok side that has just come off a dismal series against Wales, and is still struggling to marry their ever-growing game plan to actually being clinical, is your most improved performance. That is a concern if you're an All Black fan. Like if that's what you think improvement is, I would be concerned as an All Black fan.
Okay, stop talking about the All Blacks. Tell us about how great you are, because that's what we're here for, right? Because I see you've obviously been watching Eoin talking about everybody in the power rankings, Steph Curry, and what you're doing here is like, oh look, there's other things that we need to talk about. Tell us just about how amazing you are. Assert your dominance.
No, what I did like about Saturday was as I alluded to, the more diverse nature of the South African game plan. Joe, you're one of them that love to mention, the Box just kick all the time and it's boring rugby.
Big lads up front,
Big lads, yeah. That didn't happen on Saturday. Like obviously the South Africans wanted to use their physical dominance, because they're big lads. They want to use physical dominance, use your strength, but they didn't, especially in the first 35 minutes. The first option was not to kick, and even when they did kick, it was always attacking kicks. It was always contestable, up in the air, chip kicks, a grubber out in front to try and find the gap. There were kicks as a last resort as opposed to a first resort, and like Mapimpi and Kurtley Arendse got the ball, I think each about 4 times in the first 25 minutes. Now think back to the Lion series, and you could probably count on one hand over the course of the 3 tests how many times the wingers got the ball that weren't via kicks, and obviously these weren't all via kicks. And it was like, what also impressed me was the way that Damian Willemse has grabbed his opportunity at 15, and he has become arguably South Africa's best backline player. Obviously everyone loves Lukhanyo Am, and I think he's probably the best centre in the world at the moment, and that you can quote me on that one. But Damian Willemse, to me, was particularly interesting. What is particularly interesting is the way that he countered the All Black kicking game. Like the All Blacks, as opposed to the South Africans who kicked for if not for touch, at least for the sidelines, and tried to force the error there. The All Blacks always kicked it down the middle, and they wanted to keep ball in play as much as they can. And Willemse, the way he varied his response to that was very impressive to me. He started off running the ball back, 20 meters, 50 meters, then passing out to Mapimpi or Arendse or even Pollard if he was inside him, and sort of created that doubt in the All Blacks defense, which was very lethargic to get up and chase because they were expecting the kick back already. And then when Willemse saw that the All Blacks actually started pressing up and was just leaving Barrett behind, that's when he started kicking back. And unfortunately, there was a one missed kick that wasn't really a missed kick. It was actually just brilliant play by Barrett to keep the ball in that led to that 40-meter break from Barrett from his in goal line. But aside from that sort of brilliance, individual brilliance from Barrett, there was always that look of uncertainty in the way that the All Blacks were receiving the kicks, and that was purely because of the way that Willemse went about his business. He created that doubt in the mind because he's got that step, he's got that kick, he's got that complete performance, and it just showed how this South African side has developed a game plan that is not quite there yet, but it's on track for 2023.
Who's behind that? Who's the brain power behind that?
It could be a Rusty influence, but I would also, I think Sticks, the assistant coach Sticks, is probably the one that's in charge of the counter-attacking game. I've just known him as Sticks. I actually can't remember. His name has gone completely off the top of my head. But
Don't worry, we'll look it up. Go on.
Yeah. He's the sort of brain power behind the back line and sort of what they're trying to do. Obviously, Ninaba is the head coach, and he's the one that makes the ultimate decision. He's the one that comes up with a game plan of this is when we're going to kick, this is when we're going to counterattack. But I think the confidence to play the game that Willemse wants to play is also comes from his confidence at Stormers, but then he brings that into a Springbok environment where he's allowed to do that sort of stuff. And Sticks is probably we see him in all the press conferences as well. He's the one that's always good for a bit of banter. He's the one that brings people up and gives that environment into the team. And I think that's where the confidence comes in. It's a healthy environment to be in, that you can make mistakes and you can try what you want to try, and it sort of stems from the coaching stuff.
Can we just rewind to last month, Stephen? Because we didn't really do much on South Africa. I suppose we were kind of obsessed with Ireland and New Zealand at the time. But your own battles with Wales, I hadn't quite realised until this week just kind of the negative tone that maybe prevailed after the defeat to Wales. This was a second string team. I'm just seeing here Skalkberger Senior said on Twitter, if you listen to the coach, the captain and the director of rugby of South Africa Rugby and you see how they perform, then you know somewhere there is either showboating or we are much weaker than we think we are. No structure, coaching or game skills. Sad to say, Rugby World Cup only a year away. And then Rassi Erasmus quote tweeted it being noted, Skalk, thanks for your opinion. It counts a lot. Thumbs up. Which is I love Rassi on Twitter, I'm not going to lie. Was Skalk talking out of turn there? Was he a little bit too harsh, or coming into that last weekend, was there a sense that actually South Africa had something to prove?
I don't think he was talking out of turn per se. I mean, it's kind of a strange one. He was coming off the back of the sort of the 14 changes.
Yeah.
And how disconnected they were after making 14 changes. Now, any team, even Leinster, when they make 14 changes, they can be very disconnected at times. Now, obviously, this is a team that had only been together for 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior, and probably only trained together for a week. I wouldn't call it a B-side, because there is no such thing as you are a Springbok side. You go out there and you represent the South Africa with all your heart. There is no such thing. It's like you wouldn't call an Irish side a B side, for example, or at least you shouldn't. It's a Springbok side and should be treated with respect, which is also why I found it a little bit disrespectful that the Welsh were saying that the South Africans were being disrespectful, if that makes any sense. But anyways,
yes, it does. In your typical South African arrogance era, it's like you pick a B team and somebody notices and they call you out, and you can't say it's a B team. They're still wearing our jerseys, but it is a B team. It is a B team.
I mean, it's an inexperienced team, but those players were picked on form.
Did they get picked? Did they get picked at the weekend? Did they? Are they playing the All Blacks? Are they playing the All Blacks in the back-to-back games?
Ridley Aronson was, Jaden Henson was, Andre Pollard was,
a few of them
was. All of them were involved against.
I apologize.
It was inexperienced, and it was disjointed, and it wasn't the complete performance, but it's still lost by 1 point.
Exactly. Here's the thing, and the coaching ticket are delighted that they've put all those guys out there and they've had that match. It's not quite the equivalent of us playing the New Zealand Maoris, but it's not a million miles away, to be honest. And it's what you'll see in whatever the third test that we're playing. Is it Fiji we're playing? Is our third? It's South Africa, Australia, and
no, it's South Africa, Fiji, then Australia.
Fiji. So in the Fiji game, you're not going to see our full strength team. You definitely won't. But sorry, to go back to Owen's point, Skulk a bit of an idiot, really.
That's my question. I'm is he kind of like a complete outsider thinking like this? Because it does seem unusual to
reactionary nonsense.
There was quite a bit of reactionary nonsense, if you want to put it that way, to that match, and it was right. I mean, it was justified in the way that they were playing, and they did look disjointed. They didn't look like they had a set plan. There was justification to that, and I wouldn't say that they had something to prove. I mean, you always have something to prove against the All Blacks, no matter how bad their form has been coming into it. It's like, I mean, I said it for myself. Last week, I didn't think South Africa were going to win. But it was reactionary nonsense to the point where there was justified. They didn't see the plan that Ninaba and Rassi had put together. Now, obviously, Rassi isn't as directly involved with the Springboks as some people might think. He's there and thereabouts, but he's also he's the director of rugby. He's probably
really.
Hey. We don't believe a word of it. You keep peddling that propaganda. Sure.
Believe what you want. He's not there in the coaching box on match days. He's only there for.
He's giving the water still.
No, he's been banned from sideline duty.
I see they changed the rules. Yeah.
They did. Yeah.
The Razzie rule.
I saw somebody was giving out about apparently Sia Khaleesi was calling the water breaks, which is odd because it wasn't. It was Gardner because of World Rugby to go against Rassi Rasmus. But anyways, no, like it's reactionary. There was justification to it, but it was short-sighted and it didn't really gel with what Ninaba was looking at. And of course, South African fans, they want victories. They want good, solid performances week in, week out. They think that's the bare minimum they should get. And when a team goes out and plays as disjointedly as that against Wales, there is a bit of a reaction. Always.
And then obviously they picked their strongest team, and now they're a much better squad, ready for the World Cup a year out. So I've just looked at the odds. They're 5-1 to win the World Cup, which seems ridiculous. At this stage, I would make them and France favourites. There has to be but they're not. They're nowhere near favourites. France are 5-2, New Zealand are 3-1, England are 5-1, and South Africa are 5-1. I would have South Africa way ahead of England, and I have South Africa way ahead of New Zealand.
What is it because of
Ireland
the fact
are 11-2?
They've got a challenging quarter-final, maybe, but so do New Zealand. So, it doesn't make any sense for them to be on that.
Sorry, what side of the draw? They're going to play Ireland or France in the quarter-final. Is that right?
No, they're going to play New Zealand or France. New Zealand or France.
Okay.
And Ireland are going to play New Zealand or France. But then the semi-final will be either probably Australia or England for one of them, and then so basically theoretically Ireland and South Africa can meet in the final, or Ireland and New Zealand can meet in the final, or Ireland and France or South Africa and France can meet in the final. So basically whoever plays in the quarterfinals.
So give me South Africa's path to the final.
Likely at this.
Assume you beat Ireland in the group stages, right?
Yeah. Assuming we beat Ireland in the group stages, and assuming that France lose to New Zealand, then South Africa.
Let's assume France win.
Okay, assuming France win, then South Africa will play New Zealand, and then likely either Australia, Argentina, or England, depending on where they finish in the group.
England
in the semi-final.
Yeah.
And then
New Zealand, England, and then Ireland in the final.
I don't think that's how it'll go. I think it'll be the winner of. They're playing basically the winner of C versus the runner-up of D, which will be Japan or Argentina, who'll come second to England in the pool, versus Wales or Australia, whoever tops that pool.
So it's Wales or Australia.
Wales or Australia, I suspect, will be actually after they play the All Blacks.
Okay, so All Blacks, Wales. And then Ireland in the final. That's a handy World Cup for you, isn't it?
Very easy. They'll have already beaten Ireland in the pool stage as well by 60 points.
No, I think you're underselling Ireland there a bit. I said to Mick on PM last week that I guarantee. Well, I can't guarantee. I'm fairly confident that Ireland will beat. South Africa will beat Ireland in November this year. But I've got absolutely no idea how the teams are going to play in a year's time.
Do you have off the top of your head what is the power ranking in World Rugby right now? Do the world rankings? I presume the world rankings don't represent it. I presume you don't think Ireland are the best team in the world right now.
Well, the world rankings have never represented anything that actually makes any sense.
That's offensive to our entire nation, Stephen.
We live and die by the world rankings here.
I think realistically speaking, France are on top, and then South Africa, then Ireland, then.
South Africa are on top. South Africa are on top. They're the best team in the world. They're the world champions. They've got a massive bonus of the confidence that comes from that. They've beaten the Lions. France, okay, Grant, you've just been really good that one time. Great. But
that one time, what one time are you referring to? The fact that they haven't lost a match in 10 games?
Well, I mean, for one season, they've reached a peak, which is really good for them, and it's I'm sure French rugby feels great about it. But South Africa are better than France at the moment because they've done it on the world stage.
What what makes me say that France are above South Africa at the moment, like right this minute, is form, current form. Now, obviously, by the end of the year, I might change my mind, and we might see something different. But South Africa have shown that they're not the finished product yet, and France has put out basically 3 completely different levels of teams and beaten everyone that's come against them. They played a B team in Australia last year and won the series. They played a C team in Japan this year and won the series. Granted, it was dismal performances from them, but they still won. And then they've won a Grand Slam in Six Nations. Like they are the current form team.
Okay, it's 1 and 1A, I would argue, and then after that it's Ireland, England.
I would put Australia above England.
Australia might be dangerous, yeah.
Even though England
Craig Cooper just did his Achilles. Does that matter?
Yeah, without Cooper, without Hooper as well. We don't know when he will be coming back.
But the All Blacks are 6, is what we're saying here, is it?
Yeah. Oh well. I think 5th at best, but most realistically 6th.
All right, that's the killer line. SKG, thanks very much.
Cheers, guys.
8:40 this morning here on OTB AM. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course you can get us on our YouTube channel. Leave a comment there. Now, we're back at Vicar Street in association with Cadbury FC, a massive roadshow coming your way on the 17th of August. Michael Eoin, Ian Wright, Emma Byrne and Karen Carney will be our guests. Should be some great stories in the night as the 4 legends of the game reminisce about their careers and preview the rest of the season. It's an exclusive off-air event. Tickets are limited, so don't delay. Go to otbsports.com/events. And a reminder, the ticket proceeds will go towards supporting Irish women's grassroots football. We're going to buy kit with the proceeds. So it's a great night, a celebration of women's football, and all for a very good cause. Coming up next, John Duggan's latest virtual insanity. Before that, here's a snippet from the discussion on the show last night about America's sporting Mount Rushmore that we mentioned a little bit earlier. Have a look.
On Serena Williams,
yes,
Katie says, US sport Mount Rushmore.
Oh no.
Serena has to be on there. Who misses out? Woods, Ali, Brady, Jordan, etc. The US Mount Rushmore would be impossible.
It's all very recent as well. Like, I mean, how can you not have Babe Ruth on there?
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, like baseball has to come into it. It's the sport that invented it all. Jackie Robinson, for how important everything he was.
Michael Phelps, does he not get a mention?
Michael Phelps, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's people that I can't even think of right now. Like Jesse Owens.
Yeah, it's possible.
You know,
don't even know.
Carl Lewis.
Yeah, no, we'll leave Carl Lewis off. He's on the hill beside Mount Rushmore.
You have entered Power Drive.
There's always something Donnie Darko about that intro. I don't know what it is. It's like a massive head or something like that. It's like somehow to be like a bunny or something.
You've got to come in the bunny suit sometime.
Yeah, I must. Yeah, it was a good film.
Nathan came in bunny suit one time. It was all very strange.
He did, yeah, for Easter. It was, he just out of nowhere. Like, it wasn't even one of those where he like lost a bet or was prodded into doing it. He just showed up in a bunny suit one day and was like, okay.
And said nothing.
Okay.
I just stood there in a bunny suit, said nothing, and it weirded everybody out.
Yeah, that was it. I think you were about to go live in the old News Talk studio.
It was my birthday.
It was your birthday. That was it. That was the classic prank. And you'd gone on air, and then Nathan walked into the studio and just sat down. Like, we didn't know it was Nathan, or Jared didn't know it was Nathan. And I think there was just like an awkward silence on the radio for a few minutes. I mean, it's
what is this?
It's probably still still back.
It's very strange.
Right, John.
Will Zalatoris wins this week. So it is the FedEx St. Jude Invitational on the PGA Tour World Golf Championship event in Memphis. It starts tomorrow at about 1:15 Irish time. Will Zalatoris is 25-1 for 12 each way for virtual money, 5th of the odds for 8 places. It's quite remarkable. In 33% of his major starts, he's finished runner-up. Never won on the PGA Tour. But Will Zalatoris, I think, will love this course this week at Southwind. It's a fairways and greens course all the way. He was tied 8th on his first start in it last year. All of his rounds were in the 60s. To me, he just improves when he gets to bigger stages. And I think if he's going to make the breakthrough, this is the course he's going to make the breakthrough on. It's a tricky course. It's a par 70. It's got challenging rough, dog legs, water, Bermuda greens. It's going to be a test of approach play and tee to green play, and he's the top player on the tour in approach play. We know that those short putts can be a little bit of a nightmare for him, but He's got a tough streak. He sacked his caddy last Friday at halfway in the Wyndham Championship. So he's not afraid to make big decisions. I think he's mentally tough, and I think this is the week Will's Added Horse is going to break through at 25-1 in the FedEx St. Jude. So that's my headline tip this week. The other two players, Russell Henley is 50-1 for 5 each way. He's really in form, right? So he was tied 5th last week at the Wyndham Championship. He was tied 10th the week before that. He is a brilliant iron player, only second behind Zalatoris in approach play, which is what's needed this week. In his back catalogue, he's got a tie for 7th here. He played out of his skin in January, but was beaten in Hawaii by Hideki Matsuyama. I only think he's coming around now to that kind of form again. And he is an elite level player to win against, like you remember, he stared down Rory in Florida a few years ago, Russell Henley at 50-1. And the outsider, complete rank outsider, I'm sticking with Denny McCarthy for 3 each way at 200-1. Last week I headlined him at 35-1. Now he's 200-1. So now he's 40-1 to get into the top 8. And I think for a guy who only turned up once at this tournament and was 18th when he was playing much worse than he is now, he's been in the top 10 3 of his last 6 starts. People can say, well, he doesn't play against elite fields. He nearly won the US Open. He was right there around Matt Fitzpatrick on the final day. I think Denny McCarthy, if he can bounce back, 2 miscuts is factored into his price of 200-1. But I do think on those Bermuda greens, he's the best putter on Bermuda greens on tour. I think he could give people a bit of a surprise run for their money at 200-1 for Denny McCarthy. Russell Henley as well. But the headline tip this week, folks, for Virtual Insanity, Donnie Darko style, is Will's Added Horse.
Okay, John, good stuff. That is this week's edition of Virtual Insanity. There is golf news, really, that has overshadowed all this. The people are blah, 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 chatting away. The gossip is out. There was a textual exchange between Sergio Garcia and Greg Norman that came out in the deposition around the legal case. And, well, Sergio was like reporting back. Some of these guys, they're not going to come with us. A lot of blowback. Greg Norman's, get me names. Get me names. And if there's any threats coming from the PGA Tour, get it in writing. Good man, Sergio. Be a good fella now. Go and do what you're supposed to do and keep convincing everybody to come. Sergio was having doubts, basically, it looked like, in the textual exchange.
Right.
And that was all very interesting. But more stuff came out too.
Yeah, well, 3 current LIV players, Taylor Gooch, Hudson Swafford and Matt Jones, took a court case to get back into the PGA Tour for these fall events, these FedEx Cup events. They lost that in San Jose last night. So they lost that court bid. The antitrust bigger case is going to be held in September of next year. But the big, I suppose, story is that Cameron Smith, he's the number 2 player in the world. He's the Open champion, the most recent major champion. He is the Players' champion. So he's the winner of the most prestigious PGA Tour event in Sawgrass in Florida earlier this year, is reportedly, according to the Telegraph, defecting to LIV for $100 million after the FedEx Cup. So he turned up yesterday. There's a press conference, said, I'm here to play the FedEx Cup, mate. Cameron Percy, one of his fellow countrymen, a journeyman pro, said that Cameron Smith and Mark Leishman are going to leave to LIV. And he says, like, I'm a man of my word. I'll tell you when anything about my future, not Cameron Percy. And then he was asked, so what about the reports from the Telegraph? Is it a yes or no? Are you going to LIV? No comment. So it was just a crazy scene, really. And he's going. To me, is absolutely going.
Cameron Smith is actually the first defection that you'd care about, in a way. Like, obviously the rest of them have massive reputations, but he's the one who's currently playing really well and is drawing a crowd and is charismatic and has just dominated the field and had one of the most exciting major victories that you're ever going to see, and, you know, has put the whole continent in fuego again about, we've got another golf superstar coming. With the rest of them, it was like, okay, grand.
Well, everybody you would have expected to join LIV Golf did join LIV Golf.
Yeah.
I think Greg Norman has appealed to Smith's patriotism, if this is true. I think they want to have a lot more events in Australia. Is this going to bring LIV and the PGA Tour to the table to maybe thrash this out and negotiate something where maybe that LIV happens between October and December or something like that, and they have a uneasy truce? But it's got so bitter, like Fred Couples, so it was Taylor Gooch, Hudson Swafford and Matt Jones. Apparently Gooch and Swafford were waiting in their car outside the tournament venue in Memphis to get in, and obviously they're not going to get in now, so they're going to be like kicking stones. But Fred Couples went and Twitter there, I think he said deny on Twitter. So if you look at Davis Love's podcast there recently with Alan Shipnuck, really quite down on Phil Mickelson. This has got bitter. like Justin Thomas, Scotty Scheffler. I think these players are aggrieved that there's been their fellow peers or their former, colleagues are now taking legal action against them. So this has got quite bitter, and I think the bitterness at the moment is overriding any chance of a reconciliation. This has got, like, it's seen as obviously there's a Saudi sports watching element, there's the geopolitical element with Trump at Bedminster in New Jersey, where it's becoming an anti-Joe Biden rally, like the craziness of that. And if the Saudis are saying, Trump could get in here, or we could have a Republican president, and we have like quite geopolitical association that's close with golf, it's going to be a much bigger deal than Newcastle United, in my opinion, for example. So the key thing stickler here is what's going to happen with the World Golf Ranking points, because you've all these board members like Fred Ridley from the Masters, the RNA guy, Martin Slumbers. They're all sitting on a board who decides, is Liv going to get into the golf rankings? Now, for Cameron Smith, it shouldn't matter because he's got a 5-year exemption. For Dustin Johnson, for Bryson DeChambeau, it shouldn't matter. But for those other golfers, it's going to matter more and more because they won't be able to get into the majors eventually.
All right, we will see. What else going on?
Well, Rovers last night, great to see that it's at least €3 million. And actually the difference between the Conference League money and the Europa League money is not that substantial. But they got a free shot now at that Europa League group stage. If they could beat Ferencváros over 2 legs, they beat Shkoopy 5-2 on aggregates. They're into the Conference League group stage. Whatever happens, they're flying through Sheahan today, which is disappointing. Obviously, that they can't sort that out.
They ended up getting rerouted to Dublin because of fog in Shannon. So they arrived.
Did they?
Yeah.
Right.
It all worked out in the end.
Okay. Well, that's nice that we have a country that works that way. Serena Williams, I suppose we were having a discussion there, and you talked about, is she the greatest sportswoman of all time? She'd have to be up there. Is not using the word retirement, but she's going to be stepping away from tennis after the US Open.
Fanny Banker's Coon, of course.
Yeah.
That's actually a fascinating question, and also kind of like what the sort of the leading your sport into like a new age is always going to be a big part of that. I always have Babe Didrikson Zaharias down as the greatest sportswoman of all time, and I can't even remember why exactly that is, but just the multiple sport. Obviously, as a golf nut, John would be fairly watched it. But she was definitely like world class at wasn't it track and field?
Yeah, well, at the Olympics.
Yeah. So there you go. I did manage to save myself there. When you start talking, you're like, oh crap, I've started to dig this hole, and I'm a couple of feet deep. No, I'm confident.
At least you're not wearing a bunny effort. Jackie Joanna Kersey, is obviously up there. Like Steffi Graf, so many people up there. Katie Ledecky, Alison Felix, all these stars, and obviously your own Katie Taylor. Serena's stepping away. It's amazing from Compton. I haven't seen King Richard. Have you guys seen it?
No, we were just saying earlier we haven't. None of us have seen it. I've seen the documentary that she made, but it was grand. But obviously, those personal documentaries, there's always an element of, okay, where's the bit where she's actually fighting with her assistant? Where she's fighting with the producers. You don't get to see the real Serena.
Yeah. Well, we've seen it on the court at times. Sometimes she hasn't covered herself in glory. But we wish her well. Rangers won last night. Man United have pulled out of the race to sign Mark Arnautovic. That we're saying this on the Wednesday after the Premier League has begun is quite surreal already.
They were the only ones in the race as well.
Yeah. There you go. So always be careful with the language you use.
Yeah. All right, lads. Do we have something we want to show?
Yeah, you mentioned the bunny outfit, Donnie Darko time here. This is the 15th anniversary of Off the Ball. It wasn't your birthday, Ger, it was OTB's birthday, April 13th, 2017. And for the 15th birthday celebrations, Nathan showed up in a bunny outfit. Like, given it's April, I presume he had it bought for Easter and was going around to houses like a trick-or-treater dressed up as a rather threatening-looking bunny. And he was like, you know what, I'm going to pull this trick on my work colleagues. And of course, it led to great amusement, and everybody else definitely got the joke that he was going for.
There you go. He looks so young, doesn't he?
Fresh-faced.
Yeah, wow. Not that he doesn't anymore, of course. 8:53, if you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Now, OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're joined on the line by Dermot Corrigan of The Athletic to talk about the latest situation at Barcelona, which is wild. Dermot, good morning to you. How are you?
Hey, Joe, how's it going? Yeah, pretty wild, all right, around Barcelona these days.
Like, I have no idea where to start with this because it's so complicated and bizarre. There was reports overnight that Manchester City have denied that Bernardo Silva is going to join them for 40 odd million or 50 odd million, and the whole world is wondering, how are they financing all this stuff, while at the same time trying to take their former board to court, or certainly take a court action that will annul contracts that the former board put in, while we all heard that they were $1 billion in debt and completely broke. So can you maybe just give us a quick explainer of what the hell is going on?
Yeah, it is super complicated, and yeah, even a quick explainer is a tough one. But yeah, Barca they have huge financial problems that they inherited from the previous board under Bartomeu. Laporta came in about 18 months ago now, returned as president, and since then he has been trying to sort out their debts. They've done a lot of work off the pitch, refinancing debts. They brought in Goldman Sachs, so they kind of have access to money. Like it's a bit like they've remortgaged the Camp Nou. They've remortgaged everything that they can and refinanced their debts. So they do have access to money that they can spend on players. That continued this summer when they have sold or taken in money for their future TV rights. So they're taking a lot of money up front, like 600 million euros or so from American investors, and in exchange for TV rights going 25 years into the future. So they'll be paying for that for a while. So they do have this money that they want to spend on players, including maybe Bernardo Silva, who Xavi would like to get in. La Liga are saying that, hang on a minute, like this, and just because you can mortgage yourself into the future doesn't mean it's such a good idea. And La Liga have pretty tight salary cap rules, so they are enforcing those rules. So at the minute, all the players that Barca signed this summer, Lewandowski, Rafinha, Koundé, the defender they got from Sevilla, along with the players that they re-signed, whose players had run out, including Dembele, they're not able to play against Rayo Vallecano on Saturday as things stand. There's a row going on with La Liga about the fine print of how Barca have raised their money this summer about whether it's possible or not. So yeah, it's chaos. They're trying to get rid of De Jong. The stuff about it being an illegal, De Jong's contract being illegal, can be seen kind of as a way of putting pressure on him to leave, whether to Manchester United or to Chelsea, because that would help them in the fine print with La Liga around being able to register their new signings. But again, I hope some of that made sense, because it is just super complicated at the minute.
The fact that they can't play the players that they've signed this summer in the first league match of the season is absolutely remarkable. I can't remember a scenario like this ever in world sport, where one of the biggest brands in the game has been so chronically mismanaged that they can't use the players that they've spent a fortune on in the matches, and that the league is the one who are saying, no, you can't do this. Because normally it's in the league's interest to make sure that from the TV rights perspective that Lewandowski is playing, because they want as big an audience as possible. It's in La Liga's interest to get this situation sorted. So imagine how difficult it must be for them to say, look lads, you can't do this. You just can't. You can't be doing this, lads.
Yeah, like the relationship between La Liga, President Javier Tebas, and Barcelona's Laporta is not good. You go back to the Super League when Barca were involved in that, and are still involved in that. They were in court in Luxembourg last month trying to fight that battle. There is a lot of brinkmanship going on as well. Like I've been talking to people at La Liga and people around Barcelona this week just for reporting on The Athletic. And on both sides, there's kind of a feeling that it will get sorted out, that a lot of this is noise. A lot of this is kind of negotiating in public. There's constant communication between them. But yeah, La Liga are kind of forcing Barca into a situation where maybe they will have to fold. Maybe they will have to choose between players. Like maybe it might be possible to register Lewandowski under the rules, but not to register Rafinha, for instance, or the Xavi or somebody at the club is going to have to decide who's more important to register, which again is kind of crazy. It's Wednesday morning now. They have until Friday to sort it out. If something happens in the meantime, like say De Jong agrees to go to Chelsea, that would help them a lot. They might be able to register everybody, and it's kind of crazy. And you talk to people around the dressing room and they say that the players are not really that affected by it. There's been such drama at Barcelona over the years, going back to the rows between Messi and the previous president, Bartomeu. The dressing room are kind of used to all this kind of crazy noise going on behind the scenes. Neymar, all the things that went on with him as well when he was at the club. So according to them, the players are focused. They're able to, they're training this morning, getting ready to play. Xavi has he's Lewandowski in his team that he's working on for the weekend, because they're all working under the assumption that he will be able to play. But it's surreal, and it just doesn't go on at any other club for sure.
And it seems to have like permeated throughout all aspects of the club. Like you talk about maybe the players not being overly affected by it. I presume it was hard for Martin Braithwaite to not be affected by getting booed the other night, and now one of the many angles in all of this is like, oh, the Barcelona fans all of a sudden maybe not as cool as we thought they were, and the whole club just has a complete stench about it. It's not just in the boardroom anymore.
Yeah, like it went back with Dembele as well. You might remember last January, Dembele, who was a bit of a flop, who had come in to replace Neymar a couple of years ago. The club were trying to force him out. The sporting director of the club went on TV saying he's never going to play for the club again. He was being whistled when he came on to play in some games back in January and February. Xavi kind of rehabilitated him. He got his confidence back up. He played quite well towards the end of the season, and now he's back, and he was being cheered by the same fans who were whistling Braithwaite. And an extra complication is Braithwaite and De Jong have shared the same agent. So yeah, like they do put out that the players are sealed away from it, but not that they don't know that it's going on. It's just that they can kind of compartmentalize, or they can or at least try to compartmentalize it in their brains and say that the players are quite selfish in a way, and they want to perform, and they want to be into the team. But yeah, it's obviously not a good situation to be in going into the first game.
Part of this also is once the football starts, people start talking about the football, because it's going to be very interesting. They have this collection of young players, they now have this collection of really old players who, if they gel, should be very interesting to watch. And they've got a young manager who's very charismatic, and it's going to be interesting to see how successful or otherwise he is. So is there a sense that all of the boardroom wrangling will become less important, assuming the players that they've signed can play for the club, and that actually this then becomes the B story as opposed to the A story that it is at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. Like that's the plan, is that they're taking these risks, or they're doing everything that they can to get players in, like Lewandowski especially, because he's going to score the goals that's going to win them games, it's going to get them positive headlines, it's going to bring in more sponsors, get more fans to go to the Camp Nou, because the crowds at the Camp Nou were down last year. And they talk about a virtuous circle, which happened the first time around when Laporta was president. He came in at a difficult time for them in the early 2000s. They signed Ronaldinho, they had Xavi and Iniesta, who maybe is like Gavi and Pedri these days, and it kind of propelled itself forward. There was lots of shenanigans, let's say, at the club during Laporta's first term too. Under Bartomeu there was as well, but they won the triple in 2015, and Bartomeu was re-elected a couple of months later with a huge landslide. People do. It's all about if the club are winning games, if they're beating Real Madrid, if they're winning trophies. In theory, that solves everything. But if they don't, is the big problem of what happens then, because they have, they've taken on extra debt, they've signed all these players. If, for instance, they can't find a way to register them, if De Jong won't go, if they can't get the problem sorted out with La Liga, what happens then? But there's just this kind of confidence that Laporta inspires in the people around him. He's a very charismatic guy. He's a very optimistic, confident guy, and he seems to think that he's just almost through force of personality or through the size of Barca's brand that they'll be able to come through it. It's almost like he enjoys having the noise. If Barca are in the headlines, it's good for them. It's people are talking about them. It's where they want to be, and it's again, just repeat that it just doesn't happen anywhere else. It's a unique thing that goes on at Barcelona.
And again, it doesn't seem like it's just a boardroom. Like, I mean, that incident with the fans booing a player would suggest that maybe they're like, Laporta is onto something here, or that there is a level of blind belief within the Barcelona supporting fraternity that this thing is going to work out in the end, or that they might actually be doing the right thing here.
Yeah, like if you live in Barcelona, if you read the Catalan sports press, which are very close, a lot of reporters there have very good sources at the Camp Nou, and there's a kind of narrative that excuse me, that can be shaped. And if that's your bubble, I guess, then you have a very different idea of Barcelona than if you read the English media. You're a Man United fan, you're wondering what the hell's going on with Frankie de Jong, or you read the financial media and you look at all the levers that they've been setting off this season and what that will mean for the club into 10, 20 years time. A lot depends on the focus, and football fans want their team to do well. If you're a Newcastle fan or a City fan or a Chelsea fan, you manage to compartmentalize as well what's going on, and you can still cheer on the team. And yeah, that it's even multiplied if you're a Barca fan that just listens to the local media there and just talks to your own fans and goes to the games.
I know fans are obsessed with their team's debt, but debt's fine if you can repay it. And the risk that they're taking here is that the team will perform at a level that will continue to put, as you said, that virtuous circle in place. Is the debt fine? Like, have the economists who've taken a look at this gone, that's fine? Or is this Peter Ridsdale's Leeds that we're looking at?
It's a bit like the thick of it, where it's like, we have an expert, the TV show The Thick of It, where they have an expert who contradicts something. He goes, I'll find you another expert who can tell you that it is true. Yeah, Barcelona leaning economists say that it's fine, and the people at the club that they've done deals with people like Goldman Sachs to refinance the debt to push out into the future, and they're very confident that they can grow the revenues of the club. Barca is such a huge brand, one of the biggest football clubs in the world, or they say that the biggest football brand in the world, and they have all these plans to monetize their global fans, to get people in Ireland or in China or the United States or wherever to pay membership fees to become Barca fans, to get extra content over the internet. They're going into crypto space as well, which is, again, depends a lot on your point of view whether that's a good idea or not. But they feel that they can really take another step forward, as they did, back 20 years ago with the guys who a lot of them are at Man City now. That Barca's medium and long-term future is going to be fine. There's going to be a pay off the debts. That a lot of that is based on maybe they're going to be in the Super League as well. They're still quite confident that some kind of Super League is going to go ahead, and that's going to exponentially increase their revenues. The problem is if everything crashes and burns this year, if Xavi can't handle the dressing room, maybe Lewandowski gets injured, maybe key players like Pedri or Ter Stegen or somebody is out for a while, that they don't really have somebody who can replace them, and the team fail to get into Champions League or drop out again. That kind of thing would be a huge problem for them, but they're quite confident it won't be, and that that they're able to handle the debts that they have.
Can I just ask you a little bit then about the football side of it, because it definitely feels a little bit like when Xavi came in, there was a supermarket sweep. We'll buy and take everybody that we can possibly get, and we'll put them in the team, or we'll see if they can make an impact in the team, and then obviously qualify for the Champions League. Everything seems okay, but now those players who they signed, like Aubameyang's being linked with Chelsea, it'd be a short period of time. I don't know, did Adama Traore play any football? I'm not sure, but like, who's the architect? Who's this version of the cheeky Begarstein or whoever was buying the players at that point? Who's the sporting director who's going, yeah, no, this all makes sense. I can add this guy who's at the very end of his career, or I can let's re-sign Dembele. Who is making those decisions?
Yeah, the sporting director at Barca is a guy called Mateo Alemán, who's a very experienced guy, been around La Liga, was president of Mallorca when Mallorca were very good back in the early 2000s. Real Madrid tried to sign him. He was at Valencia for a while, won the Copa del Rey there, built the team there that won the Copa del Rey. And he's a super astute guy. He's very good he's more a numbers guy than a football guy. He's not a former player or anything, but he's very good. They also have Jordi. He's very good at the contracts end of it, the money end of it. They have Jordi Cruyff, who's come back to the club. Johan Cruyff's son, former Man United player as well, who has a load of experience at different smaller level clubs around the world, but knows football really well. And Xavi has a big role in identifying players and deciding who they're going to sign. But then there's Laporta. Lewandowski seems to have been more a Laporta idea than anybody else. There's other because it's Barcelona, there's other directors, there's other people there who are involved in scouting, and it's a bit like they've all got what they wanted. Like Laporta wanted Lewandowski, Xavi wanted Koundé to come in as a defender. Now somebody picked up Christensen from Chelsea because that was a good deal on a free transfer, but they've got too many players maybe to fit them all together, and it will be a huge challenge for Xavi to get the best 11 or get the best shape and get things working. A couple of people I was speaking to wonder, like they said, that the mood within the team is really good, and you could see in pre-season the team were playing very well, scoring lots of goals. It's pre-season, and some of the opposition they were playing weren't great, but there was a buzz around them, and there is a lot of optimism looking at it. Is to see now, if things go wrong, say they lose a Clásico, they have a difficult Champions League group, something happens, how Xavi manages it, how he manages disillusioned players. If De Jong stays and he's on the bench all the time, or if Christensen doesn't even get a game after being signed, and they made promises to him. How Xavi deals with all that is going to be super interesting to see. But the evidence is that he's pretty good. He knows what he's doing. How he rejuvenated or rehabilitated Dembele was really impressive, and Dembele was firing at the end of last season. So again, in football, and especially at Barcelona, it depends on your perspective on what you want to happen, maybe. But if you're a Barca fan, a lot of them are very optimistic about how things are going and think that they can challenge for La Liga and be competitive in the Champions League again this year. All
right, that's we all felt that way at the start of the season, and then you get beaten by a team newly promoted 2-0. Sorry, I digress. The quality of the young players is obviously the other thing that I presume is giving the Barcelona fans some hope for the future. Is the evolution of that particular trio of teenagers that we've been talking about for a long time, is that going to be the bedrock of the team into the future, or actually have they managed to sign enough players so that they can not rely on those to win them a league this year, for example?
Yeah, that is super interesting, because speaking to maybe going back 18 months or so when Laporta was coming in as president, there was a lot of talk about how, Pedri and Ansu Fati and Gavi, these are going to be the guys who are going to build the team around. Even some Barca fans saying they didn't care. We can finish fourth in La Liga and once we make the Champions League, we don't need to be, winning trophies because we are Barca. We're more than a club. We're based around these young players. That idea kind of went out the window last year when it seemed like they might not get into the Champions League, and they went for Aubameyang and Ferran Torres, and now this summer again. So it's kind of interesting to see whether Gavi's gets a place in the team, because he's up against Kessie now, who they've just signed. Maybe De Jong stays. Gavi has so many options. Ansu Fati as well. He was being marketed as their new number 10. He inherited Messi's jersey last year, but he's had so many injury problems that they couldn't really rely on him, and now they've signed a load of big attackers to play on the wings, like Ferran Torres and Rafinha from Leeds this summer. So maybe he won't get a game. Maybe that will affect his.
I forgot about Ferran Torres. What? They have spent so much money on players. It's
yeah.
I mean, look, if they can get them all to play together, fair enough. A quick Frankie de Jong question. There was one report that perhaps Chelsea were willing to pay the deferred money and soak up that cost. If that's the case, is that the out that everybody needs?
Maybe it would make the most sense. Like De Jong, he clearly didn't want to go to Man United. He wasn't super interested about playing in the Europa League, and he definitely wasn't going to give up any money in order to go and play there. From everything that I've heard, De Jong himself is very happy in Barcelona, loves the city himself, and his girlfriend, they got engaged earlier on this year. They've bought a new house, and he likes the lifestyle. He likes playing for Barcelona. He's always been a Barca. People say you've always been a Barca fan as a kid, but for Dutch players, it's so huge to follow in Cruyff's footsteps, and he doesn't want to give up any money, but he actually does want to stay, and he feels that he can fight and play for his place. It has got very dirty and very just not nice at all, the atmosphere around it. And from his agent's point of view, a big move would make a lot of sense as well. You could go to Chelsea, you could get all the money that you're owed up front. You can play in the Champions League there as well. It's not such a bad option. So maybe he will end up going in the end, but it will be because that kind of Barca dream that he had turned so nasty because of what happened with the previous president, and again now with the current hierarchy, which would be, well, maybe a pity for him and just a pity in general, I think.
Yeah. But do you expect it to come to an end, or do you think that maybe he might still be there in September? I think it's still most likely that he'll still be there in September. Who knows with Barcelona, and who knows with football and the transfer market and stuff, but my gut feeling will be that he'll still be there, and they'll find a way to register everybody, and they'll just kick the can down the road and hope that this virtuous circle does work out with all the great players, and it'll be Xavi's problem on who he picks. All right. I think there was a tweet that we're sticking up here, The Big Short, but it's explaining whatever it is that Barcelona are doing. That's somebody comparing. Yeah.
What is it? Is it Anthony Bourdain using the price of fish to explain what the hell is going on? They definitely need to get an equivalent of that done for this Barcelona thing. There's going to be a great book in this, Dermot. I hope you're writing one.
Yeah, taking notes.
Yeah, good man. Quick word on Real Madrid, who, like, you know, are watching all this going on. What are you doing? You just sell a training ground to the government and you get out of all this problem. That's all you have to do, lads. You're in the halfpenny place when it comes to dealing with crisis. No crisis in Real Madrid. Really quiet. Everything going very well. Coming off the back of an incredible season. They re-signed all their young Brazilians for buyout clauses of billions. Like, it's the perfect Real Madrid situation, right?
Yeah, it's worked out amazingly well for them, really, considering, you know, back at the end of last season, they thought they were going to sign Mbappe, then he turned them down. That was such a big kind of public humiliation for Florentino Perez. We all kind of stood back and wondered how he'd react to that. Excuse me. But then a week later, they won the Champions League. It was to go with La Liga title. Carlo Ancelotti smoking his cigars on the open-top buses in Madrid, and they're still on that cloud of just happy place with Madrid. They have done good business in the transfer window. You know, got their business done early, signing Rudiger from Chelsea and young midfielder Tchouaméni from French football, who looks a really good player, a really good addition to the team. So yeah, everybody's happy out at Madrid. In a kind of interesting way, Perez has been helping Laporta to sort out the Barcelona problems. That it's kind of not in their interest for Barca to fade away. They need a rival there as well. So again, with the connections that they have through the Super League, that Florentino has been, you know, helping out Laporta in making connections to help them raise some money this summer and try and sort out their financial problems, which in itself is kind of interesting. But yeah, Madrid are super happy out. They've got the European Super Cup tonight. They should beat Frankfurt in that, you would imagine, another trophy to celebrate and kick off La Liga as champions at the weekend.
Are Real Madrid the good guys now?
It is difficult to actually to go that far, but looked at from, they're definitely the better run of the two clubs. And again, as both clubs who are owned by their members, one is total chaos at Barcelona, where democracy doesn't seem to help them out that much, whereas at Madrid, Florentino, it is in theory a democracy, but he has it well under control. And yeah, they're 5 Champions Leagues in 8 years, and finances are pretty healthy, and new Bernabeu going to be opened up next year, which is pretty stunning as well. So they're in a good place.
In an interview with Paul Kimmage one time, Paul Carrington said what we need is a benevolent dictator. That may be very well what Real Madrid have at the moment, and maybe there's a gap there in Barcelona. Great to have you with us, Dermot. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, Dermot.
Dermot Corrigan. You can read his stuff in The Athletic. I think we all understand a bit more what's gone on. They've basically mortgaged their future to try and get out of the hole they're in at the moment, and they have like the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about Ferran Torres. I really like him. I think he's an excellent player.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you look at their attacking options, like, I know Aubameyang's going to be out of there, but himself, Aubameyang, Lewandowski, a host of other young stars. It's pretty terrifying, actually, the Barcelona squad. Barcelona have won this transfer window if they get Bernardo Silva, like, which is bonkers. For them to even exist in this transfer window, given everything that's happened, is remarkable. But they've only gone and won it if Bernardo Silva agrees to join for whatever it is, 40 to 50 million euro. I cannot wait for the subculture that's going to develop in years' time. Dermot's book, of course, whenever that comes out. But the documentaries on this, like, ESPN will need to go full OJ Made in America
and
on this.
And another thing. And then this happened.
Yeah.
And then they did this. So let's wait and see what happens. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you for the rest of the day. You can get this, by the way, on the OTB Sports app or on your smart speaker. Just tell your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio. Catherine Switzer, OTB Gold, is the story of the Boston Marathon. Our Louise Quinn interview with Koi Gig. This week's episode at 3 o'clock. Our retro panel is about gambling and addiction at 4. And OTB Gold is James McLean talking about his career as well. Follow us across our social channels, subscribe on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to all of our podcast feeds as well. After the break, we're live in studio with Phil for the latest instalment of Deal or No Deal. First, here's Aston Villa broadcaster Dan Bardell on how Steven Gerrard is about 10 minutes away from being booed at Villa Park, but that his job is not under threat currently.
In terms of him losing a match or 2 or 3, how far away is he from boos at Villa Park and like Gerrard has X number of matches to save his job? Surely I presume we're a long way away from that, or is there kind of an atmosphere at Villa Park that they're ready to go at this guy?
I can tell you we're probably about 10 minutes away from the boos at Villa Park on Saturday. If Villa were to fall behind, I know from previous experience of being at Villa that it could turn toxic quite quickly. I don't think he's in danger of losing his job at the moment, nor should he be. Actually, if you look at his record since he's been at the club, if the season had started when Gerrard came in, I think Villa would be 9th which is probably about where, the high end of where I would expect us to finish. So he does deserve a bit of time. I think what's not sitting right with the Villa fans at the moment is that they can forgive defeats, but Saturday was appalling. But again, as I said earlier, that can happen. It's all this other stuff that's going on with the snarky comments and stuff like that. I think that's the stuff that's getting to the fan base, and you couple that with a bad end to last season and a bad start to this season, patience already feels quite thin. But I'm just hoping that there's a reaction on Saturday, because we always, like, all the soundbites coming out of Villa all the time are, it's footballers in general. They post on social media, not the result we wanted today. We're ready to go again and have a real go next week. They need to do something better on Saturday, because that kind of performance won't be accepted again, and it does have the potential to turn toxic quite early. But Gerrard shouldn't be in danger.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be in danger at all. I don't think he will be, especially with his relationship with Purslow. But, once you start falling out with players, the fans start to turn. It is a rocky road.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
There is that residual hangover from the FA ban, from the lack of opportunities. My generation, I'm in my 40s now, we weren't allowed to kick a ball. I asked my PE teacher at my old girls' school, can we play football? And it was a flat no, so I had to buy myself a ball and practice keepy-uppies and teach myself. That was it until I went to university and made a beeline for the women's football team desk.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, the circus. The wheel turns and turns and turns and turns. Phil, good morning to you.
How are you doing, lads?
Where's the merry-go-round taking us this morning?
There's only one club everyone's talking about after one weekend. After one weekend, it's all about Manchester United, isn't it?
So, Marko Arnautovic, the fan backlash. In fairness, I think they're going to get a lot of slack for not thinking that there might be some fan backlash.
Yeah.
But football is a complete bubble. They don't remember any of the stuff that Arnautovic did, other than he scored a few goals for them when he was at, what is it, Film Drive, what's it called?
Twente.
Tilburg.
FC 20.
FC 20.
Yeah.
One of those ones. And then, he's pretty cheap and bit of aggression in training. He's going to kick Harry Maguire in training. He's going to leave something on David De Gea at the corner. That'll toughen De Gea up, won't it? That's all they're thinking. They forget about the racism and the accusations and the allegations and the suspensions. They don't care about that.
And the transfer request at West Ham. And
you're supposed to think about those things.
Going off to China for a couple of years and just actually not being good enough to play for a club like Manchester United. It would have been interesting for a couple of games to see him and Ronaldo up front for the crack, just gesturing towards each other when someone misplaces a pass. But
if he was a better footballer, a much better footballer, I don't think that those factors would have been as important.
I think if he'd signed in the middle, if he'd signed first day of the season for 5.5 million, or first day of the transfer window for 5.5 million, by the time the football comes back, everybody's forgotten and he's just a squad player, and you're like, okay, grand, they've added a little bit of depth given all of the players who've left. But the business is being run so chaotically that everything they do is under this massive microscope, and you can't point to a plan if you're signing him. But if you'd signed 5 other players, if you'd signed Rabiot at the start of the transfer window, it would have been fine, right?
It would have been acceptable, but it's coming off the back of the pursuit of Frankie de Jong, and it was all...
That's it. That's
all
the
eggs
problem.
were in that basket. But then this now goes back to being panic stuff, where they're looking at Rabiot, then the Arnautovic stuff. I think regardless of his past, I think just in terms of his quality, he shouldn't be at a club like Manchester United. So I don't think they could have snuck him in the door at any stage.
There's probably some of those players who won't be good enough, but who you sign, who are squad players and who will play in Europa League or EFL, who will do fine. Like he could have scored 15 goals for them this season in all competitions and played 10 or 12 Premier League matches off the bench, and he might have been like a plan B to lob it forward when you're 2-0 down at home.
Would he be happy to sit on the bench?
That's at this stage of his career at Man United. I think so.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Possibly, but yeah,
the money is so great.
And that's the problem. Like you said there, the business has been so badly run, and there was so much optimism when they got Ten Hag that here is a coach who has a plan, but you got to give the guy some tools to work with. And he's brought in a few players, but I said this last week, before a ball was even kicked, it looked like he was going to be starting his first Premier League game with Fred and McTominay in midfield, and that's how it transpired, and it was a disaster.
Okay, so Ronaldo is the other big thing. In the papers this morning, it's reported that some of his teammates are unhappy with the circus around Cristiano Ronaldo. They don't like Ronaldo. Remember this? What's the downside of signing a great striker who, won't Marcus Rashford learn how to keep himself as an athlete and to finish in the box? What's the downside? Turns out he's a royal pain in the ass, according to the players who aren't very good.
Yeah,
it's like, this is the perfect scenario.
Remember, he always passed on those desserts, and there was a new culture in place last season that he had set such high standards. But then you look at the game on Sunday, and Brighton score, and the cameras pan to Ronaldo, and he looks pissed off that not only have they conceded, but he has to sit there and watch this. So I can understand why players would be getting frustrated with the circus around them. Where does he go? He's not going to do a Gareth Bale and go to America. He's not going to go to China. He's not going to go to the Middle East because he wants to play in the Champions League. So straight away, he is obviously going to...
Benfica are going to qualify. Could he cross the divide in Lisbon and own the city, or would it set the city on fire?
Who knows? But I just think if they want to progress and Ten Hag wants to take control of all this, they need to do it without Ronaldo. He'll score goals. If he stays there for the season, he'll score goals, and every time he scores, it'll be pointed out that people said that Ronaldo's the problem if he pops up with a winner. But you got to think of the bigger picture, and Ten Hag is looking at trying to improve. But
have they not got Ronaldo kind of spot on? Because Ten Hag, if he looks at it from his point of view, he's thinking to himself, well, there's every chance that we don't sign a good striker. So if that's the outcome from your transfer window, then you're better off having Ronaldo than not having Ronaldo if your best striker in your squad is going to be Anthony Martial.
Yeah, but that goes back to the failings of the club, that they haven't lined up a striker that is one for the future, that is established and will be the future for the next 5 years.
They did. Some circumstances intervened that prevented them from having the guy that they thought was going to be their striker for the next 15 years. He's currently on a suspension awaiting criminal charges, or I don't know how far that's gone. But but when that happened, there was no plan B. There was no let's sign some new young strikers, and even if they've got to loan them out. If you look at what City have done this year, they've sold a bunch of players who've never played for them for loads of money that has allowed them to break even essentially in the transfer window. Okay, it cost them $1 billion and a half to do that, but Man United spent the same amount of money and got almost nothing to show for it.
No, and even obviously all the headlines have been about Haaland signing, but under the radar they've signed Alvarez, who was a quality player that would get into most Premier League teams, and he'll score goals for City. Just shows how good they are in terms of their recruitment, and so many clubs are so far ahead of United in terms of recruitment. Even look at the game on Sunday. Caicedo is playing in midfield for Brighton. This is a player that had been linked with United a few years ago. Now, what I would say, he's only 20, so if he had signed for United when he's 18, he's not going to play for the first team. It's a lot easier to break into the Brighton team, and Brighton will probably sell him for an absolute shed load of money in a couple of years.
But buy him and loan him out. That's what Chelsea would have done. That's what City have done. Generally, the players at City are loaning out are players that have come through their academy. But Chelsea are happy to buy a player and loan him out straight away. And that's what Man United could have done with some of those players. Instead, every year they sign 5 players for 10 million who we haven't heard of since. Anyway, sorry. Who else are we talking about here? Cody Gakpo,
who plays for PSV. So PSV are obviously going to play Rangers in the Champions League playoffs, so they still have a chance of getting into the Champions League. Now, it kind of got me thinking as well, who's his international manager, Louis van Gaal? What did Louis van Gaal say to Jurrien Timber about joining Manchester United? He said, don't go near them. Now, on the flip side, who is Cody Gakpo's club manager? Ruud van Nistelrooy. So maybe he said, no, it's a great place to go. But he's a very talented player, and he could be one of those players that it might take him a bit of time to settle in. And even though United are a club in transition and players should be given time to settle in, you don't get that time at Manchester United. And Erik ten Hag is going to find that out, and he probably already knows that after Sunday's defeat.
Where do you think they're going to finish?
Well, they're not. I don't think they'll finish top 4. They were so bad last season, and they still finished in the top 6. So I would imagine they'll still stay in the top 6.
Are you sure that Newcastle and Arsenal aren't going to finish ahead of them?
Well, Arsenal finished ahead of them last season. West Ham are the ones that missed out, and that went to the last day. If West Ham had won on the last day, United would be playing in the Conference League this season. But look, it's very early days, so I think everyone needs to. I would say everyone needs to relax, but I suppose it's hard to relax when it is early days, but when the structures in place are not in favour of any coach that comes into that club, it's hard to know.
Where did Liverpool finish the first season under Klopp? Was it 7th or 8th?
His first full season they got top 4. When he came in October, they finished.
That's a long time.
They got to a Europa League final, but
where did they finish in the league?
I think it was 8th in the end.
Right. So it's not beyond the bounds possibility that Ten Hag is a good manager and has a terrible season.
Absolutely.
It's more likely.
You need to
see a terrible season this year.
Nobody's pointing the finger at Ten Hag.
And get rid of so you look at that opening day of Klopp and his team. That's not going to be Ten Hag's team. Getting in that team is a bad sign if you want to be at the club long term. I would argue from unless Ten Hag signs you. If you're one of his boys, you're grand. But everybody else is like, now I see what you're doing. Now I know why you got the last 5 managers sacked.
Yeah, and you have to phase out certain players, and you just can't do it all in one go. They got rid of Pogba, which has taken a few years, and there's a few other players that they have to get rid of, but they have to bring in the right players to replace them, and that's just where you would have very little confidence in them doing so. And so, this week it's proved it, where Rabiot, I said when we talked about Rabiot on Monday, I said he is an upgrade on Fred and McTominay, but that is not a great starting point for.
I agree. I do agree with that. I do think that he's fine to get in for 15, 20 million. That's actually a fine signing. He's 27. He's an international. You know what you're going to get from him. He's an improvement, so you're improving the squad. And some other player will actually release him to be the third choice as opposed to your first choice week in, week out. I can see why that's okay business, and I see your point on that as well. But the deal's not done.
No.
The deal's not done.
No.
It's been a whole week. What are they doing?
Well, there was talk of him going to Monaco, but they obviously got dumped out of the Champions League qualifiers last night by PSV, so maybe that makes up.
They can't do business quietly. They need to blah 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 blah. Just do your business.
And that's it. And I said how they progress carrying out their business like this year after year, it just seems that whoever goes in is just doomed to fail.
Yeah. Right, Timo Werner re-signs for Leipzig 2 years after leaving for Chelsea. Scored 23 goals in 89 games for Chelsea, which is more than I would have thought. I would have said 15. It didn't appear to work out. Why did it not work? 95 goals in 159 games for Leipzig.
I just think that it went up a level. Obviously, the expectation, the price tag, he didn't hit the ground running. Also, at times as well, the way Chelsea played probably didn't suit him. And he had obviously been linked to Liverpool. Now, Liverpool were never going to replace Sadio Mane a few years ago with Timo Werner. But if Timo Werner played in a Jurgen Klopp team, I guarantee he would have scored a lot more goals on the left-hand side.
Maybe Klopp brings him next year on the cheap.
But he went to Chelsea, and one concern you have for Chelsea, even under Thomas Tuchel, as good as they are and can be on their day, they can match anyone. They sometimes don't look potent enough in attack. It's not that they don't have good attacking players, but they don't look cohesive enough. And at times with Timo Werner, it was slapstick stuff where, he'd beat a few players, and then do you remember that Southampton game away from home last season where he did end up scoring, but he almost scored one of the goals of the season where he ran around a few players and then hit the post, and Kai Havertz knocked in the rebound, and you could see Werner was disgusted. He was like, okay, we've scored, but I should have scored that goal. He had his moments in the Bernabeu in that game against Real Madrid and the Champions League as well, but it was just too inconsistent. One thing is, when he was playing, he was always a bundle of energy and willing to run in behind opposition defenders, but just couldn't finish.
He looked like a footballer.
He did. I'm convinced that 80% of the 8 out of 10 wingers or attacking midfielders that have ever played football in Europe have played for Chelsea at some point, and a good percentage of those people are currently at the club, and Timo Werner was thrown in amongst them because Romelu Lukaku was their number 9 last season, and he was competing with the likes of Pulisic and Ziyech and Havertz, and now you can throw Raheem Sterling into that mix this season, even though he might well play as a number 9 for them at some point, or maybe the guy who's leading the line for them. It is a very tough club to succeed at, and I think that he was a victim of that as much as anything else.
Phil, Liverpool's midfield options a little bit thin after the injury to Thiago, which I guess we kind of have to expect at this stage of his career, the way his injury profile is.
Big time, yeah. Like he pretty much missed a third of Premier League games the last 2 seasons. And you remember when he started, there was this talk going around that he's actually slowing them down and he's the problem, but that's absolute nonsense. The win rate with Thiago starting last season was 88%. So they won
not bad.
15 from 17. Then when he didn't play, they won 13 from 21. So that dropped to 62%. It's clear when Thiago plays, Liverpool are a better team. But so this is the problem Liverpool have in midfield. Even before this injury happened, I would have said at the start of the season, Liverpool are light in midfield. We know Jurgen Klopp will wait for the right player. And everyone thinks that is Jude Bellingham, whether he goes next summer or not. But even if that did happen, I still think there must be another right player there, because a lot has been made of the Liverpool front three, the famed Firmino, Mane and Salah. It was about replacing them. So now obviously Mane is gone. Firmino is being phased out, even though he started at the weekend. But the midfield three, that was the success that was built on to win the Champions League, to win the Premier League. Fabinho was brought in, then you had Henderson and Wijnaldum. Milner chipped in there as well. Obviously Wijnaldum is gone. Whatever people thought about Wijnaldum in his last season, he was durable, he was available all the time.
Yeah.
Milner is getting on. He actually made an impact on Saturday where he came on. Henderson and Fabinho have both picked up injuries, so they're light there. You've got young, talented players coming through. Harvey Elliott, 19. Fabio Carvalho, 19. But the other three that I mentioned, they're Henderson, Milner, Fabinho. Henderson and Milner both in their 30s. Fabinho, 28. So he's got Naby Keita. I forgot to mention Naby Keita, a player that was brought in from Germany for big money, and he
has had the injury problem too.
He's had injury problems as well, but it's hard to remember him having outstanding games.
Okay, who's your first three? Thiago, if everybody's fit, Thiago, Fabinho and Henderson, or Thiago, Fabinho and...
I would go Thiago, or Fabinho, Thiago and Henderson. But you can't play that midfield for the whole season, so you bring in Elliott. I think Carvalho, I think he's good to go, he's ready. Curtis Jones, I think, is behind those. He's injured at the moment anyway. Oxlade-Chamberlain,
I'm amazed he's still at the club.
Yeah, well, I think it's hard to sometimes get rid of these players if they're injured all the time. How do you say, like, if you're trying to get rid of a player, you're basically hoping that they're fit for enough time to get themselves in the shop window. But Oxlade-Chamberlain unfortunately breaks down too often.
Not at this point, yeah. Phil, good stuff. That's today's Deal or No Deal. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're back tomorrow from 7:30 with Graham Hunter's You Had to Be There. Shelbourne's American super signing Heather O'Reilly will be live in studio. Ciara McGeehan, fresh from her silver at the Commonwealth Games, will be on the line, plus much more as well. Right now, we're leaving you with Racket Magazine's Caitlin Thompson on Serena Williams' legacy. Enjoy.
Happy to bring in Caitlin Thompson of Racket Magazine. You're very welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I guess we are talking about somebody very iconic here in the absolute highest echelon. She is part of that group with Ali and Tiger and Jordan and Pele and Maradona. She is Serena.
She's really hard to put into words just in terms of the outsized footprint she leaves the sport with, and also what she's done outside the sport. I mean, she's truly transcended the game in a way that's I think, as you listed, among the greatest names of athletes of any kind of sport in history. Yeah.
She said of retirement recently, it comes up, I get an uncomfortable lump in my throat and I start to cry. The only person I've really gone there with is my therapist. one thing is, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. So she's somebody who's very honest, even at 40. This is a devastating moment in her life to have to retire.
Yeah, I think she's somebody who we know as a fighter in every context. She's a fighter on the court. She never says die. And I think, reading that essay that she sort of collaborated with Vogue to publish for the September issue that came out today, it's very clear she's ambivalent about this. I think if she were able to do more with her body, with her time, with her fitness, with her family, she alludes to wanting to have more children in that essay. And, if she were a man, she wouldn't have to give up the chance to play to make that happen. This is an insight into an athlete who's not going away happily or without some feelings of conflict. And that is what makes her really interesting. She's a really interesting person. And I think this announcement was handled in a really interesting way.
It was interesting as well. She said in 5 years that her daughter Olympia has only spent one 24-hour period away from me. That's quite extraordinary given the lifestyle. Absolutely. And I mean, she's the first to admit in that essay that she has a lot of help. She also has a husband who I think, certainly is a successful business sort of thinker and leader in his own right, but somebody who's been able to go really into more of a support role as she's traveled the world and continued up her, schedule for the most part. The other thing that needs to be said, though, is that she hasn't really played a full schedule of tennis since Olympia has been born. That's not a knock on her, but it would be unrealistic to say she's been really full-time back to the tour ever since, she won that Australian Open while pregnant and then left to go have Olympia in what we now know was a very complicated delivery and had some complications even after birth, postpartum. So Serena hasn't really been a full-time tennis player in the 5 years since she's been back. I think she's made, some stronger showings in some of the seasons than others. But really, I think a lot of us were sort of waiting for this announcement to happen because the appearances that she does make are really fewer and far between and have been for a couple of years. Yeah, if people are wondering about her recent form, she won her first singles match in over a year the other week in Toronto. And the last Grand Slam was that Australian Open when she was 8 or 9 weeks pregnant in 2017. Yeah, I mean, she's come close. In those first couple of years back, she got to a few finals. She notably got to the US Open final where she lost against Naomi Osaka. She made another US Open final where she lost against Bianca Andreescu, and she lost 2 Wimbledon finals, one against Angelique Kerber, I believe, and the other against Simona Halep. So she's really been in the mix. Like, she's made a very, very strong showing, especially postpartum. And we've seen other tennis players do that. Kim Clijsters comes to mind, who won a slam on either side of pregnancy, several in fact. But, it's no easy feat to accomplish. And I think really in the past couple of years, her efforts to get deep into slams and put herself into contention the way she did immediately after she became a mother really kind of started fading. She kept going out earlier and earlier in tournaments, and I think eventually reality sort of catches up with us, right? And I think going back to what she announced today, it really does seem like she didn't come to this conclusion or resolution without some very deep conflict that maybe is still present. I watched King Richard recently, a movie which may well be forever overshadowed by Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. And I wasn't that keen to watch it. I just assumed that their involvement meant it would be happy, clappy, hollow and not up to much. But actually it was surprisingly decent. And towards the end of the movie, which really charts their extraordinary beginnings. And it's a really worthwhile thing maybe just to nod back to again. But Venus has made her first real inroad into the public consciousness, and Serena, the younger sister, is very happy for her sister, but, is looking on with some impatience and jealousy. And Richard Williams, aka Will Smith, spots this, and he walks over to, this is right towards the end of the movie, and he says, Venus is going to be the world number one. You're going to be the greatest of all time. I don't know if that happened. But was that always the sense, do you think, Caitlin, that Serena was going to be the one? It's hard to say. I mean, I think, yes, in the sense that Rick Macy and several other of the coaches, even portrayed in that film, but several of the other coaches who sort of famously got a look at them when they were playing. And the reason I use that phrase, got a look at them, is
Serena and her sister Venus did not play U.S. junior tennis. They didn't play international junior tennis the way that, by the time you see a Victoria Azarenka or somebody like Coco Gauff, they've usually won or contended for junior Wimbledon, junior Roland Garros, junior Australian Open, that requires, sort of playing your way up the ladder locally and then, obviously in your nation. And Richard Williams very smartly kept them out of that system. And so some of the mystery surrounding their arrival on the tour was how good they actually could be. Obviously, their dad was a hype man of the finest order, but it wasn't really clear if they were going to be ready for the pros because they had sort of eschewed this traditional sort of training, training grounds, training apparatus for junior development. And so some of the coaches who had a chance to look at them or play with them or get to know the family a little bit kind of did point out Serena might be the superior athlete. And I think what I liked about that film and what Serena's announcement sort of today both nodded to is that film really gave Venus her due both as the trailblazer, but also the person who kind of needed to go first and remove barriers so that Serena could really maximize her potential. Serena said it about her sister, which is absolutely true. Not only was that younger sibling jealousy sort of momentum and motivation building, but also it was because Serena faced a, less sort of thorny path because of what Venus had done to kind of remove some of those obstacles, break ground, create the conversation around equal pay at places like Wimbledon. And so it really is interesting, frankly, that Serena is retiring before Venus, who's older, but also that she kind of acknowledges that Venus, walks so she could run. And I think that duality has always been part of their career and the media narrative around them.
When they moved from Compton to that Rick Macy Academy in Florida, all the coaches are aghast that Richard Williams is taking his daughters out of junior tennis. And it's said numerous times, well, this is just the thing you do. This is the route into the pro circuit. You can't just not play junior tennis. Now, certainly in the movie, it's portrayed almost as, well, look, I want my daughters to have a childhood and to do well at school. But you mentioned there Richard Williams was also the ultimate hype man. To what extent do you think it was about giving them a childhood and thinking about their long-term development versus almost the mystery and creating the hype?
I think it was probably both. I mean, Richard Williams was a much more complicated and at times, honestly, kind of sinister force than that movie portrayed. I mean, they really leaned into how protective he was of his daughters, which was, by all accounts, absolutely true. He was also a businessman who was creating demand and creating, negotiations with apparel companies before, really was certainly maybe done at the time. So I think he was a lot savvier and a little less simple than the movie. Obviously, it's a Hollywood creation, wanted to portray. But I actually think that was, again, probably to their benefit. I mean, Richard Williams, again, complicated guy. You can read a lot about him, while he was telling the world that his daughters were going to be number one in the world, which they were, and nobody believed him. He also gave an interview, I think, to Esquire in the 90s where he said he was going to have multi-platinum albums that would make, Michael Jackson blush. So you're kind of like, well, some of that's true. And it does take this kind of chutzpah to make, I think, something out of not a lot. So credit to him. But also he's kind of more wildly interesting and textured than certainly, Will Smith or a Hollywood vehicle is inclined to portray. And again, that's sort of one of the many interesting things about the Williams family. They're not super, super linear. There's a lot of texture there. And I think, in saying goodbye to Serena, at some point, it's kind of unclear what her last tournament is going to be. And she left it a little bit open. We are losing this really sort of fascinating person from the mix. Although, you could very rightly point out that we haven't really had her for the past couple of years.
A last thought on Venus and Serena, because, I mean, it's one of the most iconic images, I suppose, of 21st century sports is those two sisters from Compton playing on Wimbledon Centre Court in the final. It was extraordinary at the time. It's extraordinary in retrospect. Of their 9 Grand Slam finals, Serena wins 7-2. And that is a difficult thing. And it felt like a difficult thing for them. Your sense of their relationship, Caitlin?
I think that was not that difficult for Venus. I think losing those 2 matches was more difficult for Serena than losing the 7 matches than it was for Venus, if that makes sense. My understanding of their dynamic, and I've known people who have obviously spent a lot more time and worked with them or coached them or played alongside them. The impression I have is that Venus at the end of the day would do anything for her little sister, and if not accepted or gladly took second place, she didn't seem too put out by the fact that she'd had a great career, and as it was happening, even then it was being eclipsed by this sort of much more attention-grabbing, dynamic, ultimately more successful younger sister. And I think that's sort of always been, again, one of the more interesting things about them. They didn't seem super into the rivalry that, you might be tempted to create. And even to such a degree that a lot of those finals that you just cited were not all that competitive. Some of them were, to be clear, but not all of them had that sort of sizzle of two people who were really going at it, mainly because you kind of got the sense that Venus might be, pulling punches, or maybe it's hard to play your sister, which I think happens regardless of whether it's, in a backyard or on the highest stages of the game. So I don't ever get the sense that Venus begrudged her. If anything, I think she's Serena's number one fan. Yeah.
And then nobody had a winning record against her. Martina Hingis Williams was 7-6, Jennifer Capriati 10-7, Justine Henin 8-6, Sharapova 20-2. Really catches the eye. What made Williams so great, in your opinion? What, like, when you're trying to describe her game to generations later on? Let's just pretend they can't look it up on YouTube for a moment. What are we saying about it?
If you look it up on YouTube between the years of like 2005 to 2015, you see it within a second. Yeah. And I do want to point out that Justine Henin record was the closest. Had Henin not retired, I think maybe they would have had some classics, because they were actually quite, I don't want to say evenly matched, but it was the closest that she came to a true rival. Unlike 20-2 against Sharapova, which those two wins on Maria's side came very early, and then Serena spent the better part of 2 decades winning quite easily. But I do think, for me, what makes her so amazing is, you list all the Grand Slams, you list all the titles, you list all the gold medals, you list all the, records that she's claimed at, number one and all this stuff. And sure, on paper, all of it. But really, for me, is just the separation. And I'm going to steal a line from my friend and one of our contributors, Andrea Petkovic, who talked about very recently the difference between playing somebody like Naomi Osaka, who hits through you with giant shots, and somebody like Serena. And she said, you think Serena is going to hit through you because she has power. She has, obviously, famously, probably the best serve, certainly in the women's game, maybe contender for all time. She can hit through you. She has easy power on both sides, but really it's actually just how she overwhelms you in every single way. She's faster. She's more clinically strategic in terms of placement. She's got incredible hands, which is why she's won all those doubles titles. She's got a feathery slice, but also an incredibly powerful and placeable, ground strokes from both sides. So really she just does everything so much better than anybody else. And I'm hopefully will be forgiven if I get this wrong, because I'm not a giant basketball fan, but it has been described to me the way that Michael Jordan played at the height of his powers, how he just did everything better than everyone else. And it was so clear that he was a cut above in every way, defending offense from the field, up close, etc., speed, timing, anticipation. And that's sort of the sense I get from what Serena, during that really decade and a half of dominance she was doing. Nobody just could come close to her. And even when you would watch a match that it looked like she was going to lose, somehow you knew she had, through a combination of, psychological advantage and also just tricks up her sleeve, she could fight her way out of it. And so she really was, at the height of her powers, sort of untouchable. And like I said, Justine Henin was the only person who got close, but she was really only able to do it for a couple of years. And then she stepped out of the game. So yes, it's hard. All of these things make Serena great. It's not just the records. The records are indicative of the real separation she had from the rest of the field. And I think for me, that's really the lasting legacy.
Yeah, I saw she won 37 Grand Slam matches from a set down, which is an extraordinary feat in and of itself as well. She said in this Vogue essay, at one point she talks about Venus, and she says, unlike Venus, who's always been stoic and classy, I've never been one to contain my emotions. And that is something that I'll remember about her, and it's a lingering image. And I do think of Flushing Meadows in 18 and Osaka, and that extraordinary evening where she called Carlos Ramos a thief, and sexist, and told him that he would never umpire on a court of mine again. And she said, I've never cheated in my life. I have a daughter. You owe me an apology. And she told another official that she was being mistreated because she was a woman. And then her coach actually admitted afterwards he had been sending her signals. So, look, I kind of love and respect a sore loser as well, even when she was being at her indignant worst.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a disservice to her not to address the fact that she wasn't the greatest sport. I don't think she would ever cheat anybody, but I definitely, the incident you described, also another incident at the US Open where she threatened to shove a ball down a linesperson's throat. I mean, I think the absolute competitive fire that comes with winning 23 Grand Slams, the most of all time, men or women, has some edge. It means you're going to win and want to win at all costs, and you're not going to say die, and you're going to fight. And whether the fight is with an umpire or with your opponent or maybe with yourself, she never shied from that fight. I'm not totally in love personally with what that always meant, because for me, and as I've talked about, I've been openly critical of her at times when I felt like that crossed a line, and that's not the particular way that I like to see the game played when it crosses into that sort of area. That said, it is a part of her legacy, and it did, I have to imagine, fuel her and drive her to the greatest heights. It's not a competitive friendship out there, right? So I do think that Serena, her legacy as a champion is not tarnished at all, but it is necessary to note that she mixed it up with whoever. And, Serena Williams would not hesitate to cut you if she needed to, if you stood between her and a Grand Slam. And I think that's, frankly, probably what made her so great.
These were two sisters in a family making their way in a very white sport as well. And she boycotted the Ericsson Open as it was in 01, but a tournament at Indian Wells from 01 through to 2015 because, well, her father had looked for an apology for racist abuse from the tournament director for racist abuse he'd received in the crowd, and that wasn't forthcoming. And so they boycotted that tournament for the guts of, 14, 15 years. Generally, did racism... was it a factor in their week-to-week tennis life, or isolated incidents, or to what extent was it a factor in their experience in the sport?
I mean, I can answer in a way I might imagine, and asking, a white woman to speculate. I do want to acknowledge that it is just that speculation, and I don't, be overly confident in my ability to answer or put myself in anybody's shoes. But yeah, I mean, from what they've talked about and from what I have seen in the sport myself, coming up playing tennis in the South, there's a lot of gatekeeping, and we know that from every person who's tried to break barriers within the sport of tennis, and probably every other one as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think they were absolutely justified to boycott Indian Wells, where the crowd famously turned on them, and according to Richard Williams, and I don't think he'd have any motivation to make this up, they had racial epithets hurled at them. I've looked at footage of that, and it seems like that was in fact the case. And I think, that incident is indicative of a larger trend, of a larger experience, especially I think for Black Americans, certainly, when you think about locker rooms and acceptance, and a lot of the times, these guys were in locker rooms with Eastern Europeans who'd never played next to a Black person or with a Black person. And, those are firsthand accounts that we know. So I think, at the very least, this was a very, to me, welcome disruption, but a disruption to the status quo. Obviously, they're great, Black tennis players, Althea Gibson chief among them, Lori McNeil, Zina Garrison. They weren't the first, but the first to win consistently and be fixtures in stardom and in finals. They essentially were, and I think it's hard to separate what must have been a pretty constant experience from isolated incidents. I don't know that they would necessarily feel very different from the people experiencing them, right? It probably feels like a larger trend. And so I think what is interesting to understand about them is I take all of their reports of, racial static as, of course, face value, that's their experience, but also coming from where they came from in terms of Compton, California, where their father came from, which is, the Deep South. These are folks who are, only generations removed from slavery and, servitude. And in the South, it feels like not enough distance has happened between the Civil War and modern day. And so, I think what is amazing and probably helped a lot is having siblings and a really vocal and visible and supportive family, because it is useful to anybody in a sort of tumultuous, difficult, pressure-filled environment like tennis that really relies on the individual, especially if you're Black and you're in a sport that doesn't have a lot of faces that look like yours.
Caitlin Thompson, we're out of time. Thank you so much.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.